was like, I hope we don't get too far down the road. We're missing stuff here.
I hit record before you even walk in, so
Really?
it may have not been the best sound quality, but we're picking up everything you've
Really?
said so far. Yeah, something I started about a dozen episode.
Because you've been missing good stuff?
Well, people were walking in, and the second they came through the front door, they'd be spitting fire, and I was just like, "Damn it, I didn't catch that."
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we move on, let me officially play the intro music and introduce you real quick. Only house keeping item I wanted to throw at you is the nice thing about podcasting is that we can delete anything. So if you do go down and say something about like a family member or yourself and you're like, hey, I'd prefer that not be in there, just let me know. This episode will probably take about a month to come out, so I got plenty of time to edit anything that you end up saying, or I don't know, hopefully there is no editing and we can just release the raw version, but if there is something, I just want you to have that peace of mind.
Let it ride.
All right, here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode on David's Saturday Night Sit Back. This afternoon, sitting back with me, I am grateful to chat with Cooper T. Sanders, a natural bodybuilder here in Texas. And alongside with weightlifting, Cooper is passionate about helping families navigate the substance abuse treatment process. Cooper's been a fundraising committee chair, admissions coordinator, and director for a variety of nonprofits throughout Whitney, Ingram, and Smithville, Texas. Today, I'm looking forward to chatting with Cooper about the differences between ego and the highest version of ourselves, motivation and coaching, substance abuse, gym culture, what he believes our purpose as men here on earth is, spirituality, the come up, and we will see what other digressions we go on today. Cooper, I'm grateful to have you here in the studio with me, and welcome to your episode on David's Saturday Night Sit Back.
Dude,
What is funny?
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Because you're so official, and like I was filling out the thing. There's a questionnaire, and he's like, and David's like, hey, fill this out, and like this is the process, and I guess we can kind of talk about just like how we got here, but. I was sitting there and I was like filling out this sheet, and I was like, how do I fill this out? What type of stuff do you want to put on? And I was just like, what is my journey? What's important to talk about? What's something that, someone want to listen to? Like and the come up was one of mine. When you were going through all the different stuff, and you're like, he's also going to talk about the come up. And I was like, I forgot I put that.
Yeah, I guess it has been about 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah,
you filled it out a while ago. Thank you for that, by the way.
For sure.
Sometimes it's like pulling teeth getting people to fill those things out. I think they're scared of signing their life away to me or something. I'm like, hey.
I didn't know what to expect, man, because like I remember, I'll tell you, I think we were talking about it before, but like, man, just big kudos to you for actually like going through with the whole podcast situation, because literally, I have actual podcast equipment at my house. You know what I mean? Like I went to Best Buy and got some cool mics, and they told me I needed a box and all the different things. And there was a buddy of mine, and like, anyways, it died. Like those mics are just like at my apartment, and like it was like, damn, man, I wish I would have pursued it. So like when you reached out about doing a podcast, I was like, this is a really cool opportunity, and I'm excited, and I just hope that maybe like some of the stuff that I've been through, like, affects change in people, and like they can use it, and it's powerful. And yeah, man, that's kind of where I'm at in life too, is like when I talk to you gave me like such a stellar intro. I was like, I think that's what I was laughing too, because like, man, it still hits me. Like I'll be talking to families or doing work, or like you were talking about like the nonprofit stuff, or just like you were talking about like ego, or just like the realization of like who we are, and like self-confidence, and like true confidence, and like false confidence, all of those different things. I'll hear like you like go off like nonprofit, and I was like, yeah, I guess I did do some of that stuff.
You've
like
done some stuff.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
Yeah. Why? Well, before I ask you that, if you knowing what we might talk about today, because you know so you know where the story may go. Who do you hope tunes into this episode? And I don't mean someone. I mean, if you do know someone personally that you hope tunes in, that's great. But if there is like a random person or group of people out there in planet Earth that you hope this podcast reaches, who would those individuals be?
I hope that the conversation we have affects anyone who is on the journey of life, which I believe is self-actualization, understanding just what. Oh, dog, dog got our mic.
I guess it would help if we actually plugged a few things in.
Well, dog got
Can
our
you
mic.
hear me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear
Is
you
that
good.
better?
No, I was
Now
hearing
that
you
they're actually
anyways.
on? Okay.
But dog got our mic. But no, I hope that this. I hope it's just for anyone that is on the journey of life, which I believe is self-actualization, finding out like what our purpose is, who you are, your true confidence. I mean, this is the journey that I've been on, and like, man, I'm stoked. I think like we get like caught into these different just different ideals that are expectations that, like, at this age you're supposed to have this, or you're supposed to do this or operate like this. And like for me, my route has been super unconventional, and I think like spirituality and like just the powers that be, whatever it is, I think that, man, it's force pushed, like proven to me that life is unconventional, and these are like, people have whatever thoughts or expectations as like maybe goalposts, or like we try to do the best we can, but it's all there's no perfect script, and just because it doesn't turn out the way that maybe we thought it was, sometimes it ends up being like a million times better. That's where I feel like I'm getting into that in life. I feel like I'm like approaching something that I could have never put together, but like so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is Cooper?
Oh man, Cooper is. This is what I tell families, and like for me too. Like when I, like how'd you get into substance abuse? How'd you get into weightlifting? All that, man. There's a picture of me. Hopefully, I can get you that picture. But it was a picture of me when I was 7 years old, and I remember there was this kid that was, I had a big smile, and it was my baseball picture. And I was like maybe 7, and I had on my jersey and everything, and I had like a gap. So like, the reason why I bring that up is because like I didn't care about like any of the any of the constructs, or like what was a perfect smile, or what people thought about me or anything. I just remember being 7 and holding my baseball bat and like looking directly into the camera and having the biggest, goofiest smile, and just being so happy to be playing baseball the day, or be doing, the group pictures for baseball that day. Like, I feel like that's who I am in my purest sense. And then like life happened, and like there were things that pulled away from that. And like now I feel like I'm getting back to that purest version of myself.
You grew up in Dallas.
Yeah.
What was Dallas like? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 29.
29.
I've been telling people 30 this year, but I'm actually 29. I don't know why.
Why you rounded
I was
up?
just like, I just need to go ahead and let it happen, man. I was like, brother, I'm 30. And no, I actually turned 30 in June.
Okay.
And I actually grew up in Plano, which is North Dallas. So Dallas is very distinct about that. They want to know like what part, because it's like big. Same thing with Austin. Like, are you East Austin? Are you West Austin? And Dallas, it's like, did you grow up north? Did you grow up in south? Like, there's a lot of different. But I grew up in East Plano. My parents, we moved around a little bit, but started out like Carrollton, I want to say. Then we moved to St. Louis. My paternal parents, they got divorced. My mom moved back with me and my sis. My sister's like maybe 3 years younger than me. Shout out to Connor, love you. And shout out to girls who have bro names. I don't know why that works out super cool, but all the chicks that have like Connors, Hunters, Blakes, like I was having this conversation with someone else. I was like, it's super cool. And like, shout out to my mom for like giving her a cool name, but like her name. So my little sister's name's Connor. She's super cool. We moved back, and yeah, man, there was a lot of different experiences. We can spend some time there too, but I think moving back from St. Louis to like Richardson, North Dallas, really just trying to find my way. I think at that point I kind of started shifting out of like feeling like I was a kid, and like, like my mom needed me to watch my sis, and just a great amount of responsibility at that age. Like, she was like, I remember my mom sat me down. She was like, this is the house key. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to like come in, make sure your sis is good. You call me, you lock the door, and just a great amount of responsibility. And I think, some of the stuff we put down like on the sheet, like as far as topics to talk about, there was a part of me that loved that though, like that responsibility, like her handing me the key, like I embraced that and I was like, I have it, like I can do it,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
locking the door and calling her that we made it home inside. But I feel like there was something innately inside of me that like craves that responsibility.
Yeah. What's I'm gonna try to jog your memory a little bit. If you go back as as far as you can, what do you think is one of the earliest memories that you can remember as a kid?
You're talking about like when I got woken up. I don't know. Like I don't know, man. I was joking about like the Matrix or whatever. I don't know what my first memory was. Let me think. I think maybe
Or maybe even one that stands out to you. So maybe not your earliest one, but maybe if there is like a one of your favorite days as a kid.
favorite as a kid. I do remember. I mean, a lot of it was around sports. I used to have this big blue bat. It was a plastic bat, and I remember being in the backyard and my dad like throwing me a baseball. It was like a plastic baseball, or whatever. But just smoking it, man. Like I had it. I had
Yeah.
it from, and like I still give him crap. But like I was like left-handed, and in baseball, like it's advantageous to be left-handed. But I was like, you should have kept me left-handed, and then like I switched to right or whatever. But just being in the backyard and like hitting home runs with him, stoked about it. I was good at something. And I knew he played baseball, and yeah, those are some of a lot of sports. And I think part of the conversation too is just like around identity. A lot of my identity was wrapped up in, we talked about weightlifting, sports, just being in good shape, being a bro, all that gets in. Until there was a point in my life to where just the surface level of being a bro's bro and being a sports guy and all that, like that ran out, and like that identity wouldn't suffice for the circumstances that were coming.
Were you and your parents close?
Yes, I feel like I was definitely close with my parents until I was about 15 or 16, and I still yearned for the proximity that we had, but there was, and I think this is a big thing to talk about, is like I think that parents discount the influence that our friends have on us. And I'm not saying I had bad friends, but I valued their opinion more. And when I was maybe 14, 15, it was like, so and so had a girlfriend, and I was trying to be cool, and like it was really weird. I remember, I don't know if high schoolers do this anymore, but we would go, and then there would be like these like hives, like you before school there would be like 10 people standing in a circle talking, and then another pod of like 10 people.
Yeah.
And like you would walk up to the circle and like you got your stuff and like hopefully be a part of the conversation. And like I always had friends, but like those in between moments when you would pull up to the pod or the little hive of people talking, that was so important to like how I was perceived in those moments. And I just remember being like super self-conscious about, just in the circle, like the comments that I made or what I was dressing, what I was wearing when I was going to school. And I believe the pressure of that started to translate with the relationship that I had with my family. Namely, like my mom had like a solid job. She like worked at AT&T, like an accountant, solid. But I remember putting pressure on my mom. She's like a single mom, and like, it sounds so crazy now, but like she was trying to like, keep me in like cool stuff or whatever, and she had bought like one brand, and I was like, Mom, don't buy that. I felt like a brat now. I was like, I know it's cheaper, but don't buy this brand. I feel such a brat now.
I've turned into that person. I'm a HEB everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, the name brand is $7, HEB is $4.50.
Yeah.
We're going with
Well,
HEB.
yeah. Yeah, I put pressure on her, and she would like get me stuff, and I'm like, "Don't give me that. Like, I'd rather like one of these as opposed to three of these." And I'm like coaching my mom on like what to get me, but that was redirected or just displaced angst that I had, that I was feeling at that age. Just who am I? Where do I fit? Am I doing enough? Am I cool enough? And even the stuff that I had wasn't enough. It was like I feel like I'm not satisfying myself, and then I feel like I might be doing better than him, but there's several people that I can look around and see like they're noticeably doing better than me, and like getting caught up in that, like just the comparison game. I feel like that from the age of about 15 to about 25 when I got sober, that was the place that I lived in, like the mental purgatory that was like trying to meet expectations of people that I really didn't even know, and my own. I don't know why I was striving so hard to meet these expectations, but I mean it just dominated my life for probably like a decade, and that culminated in being like a really good like athlete. Like I was good, and then also too like with I heard some beeping.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It started out with sports, and then with school, I was trying to like maintain expectations at home, maintain expectations on the sports teams, with girls and my friends. And I remember like my junior year, I just like after like sports games, man, or like on the weekends, to alleviate like the angst, or like to like if I was doing enough, or if I was cool enough, or like if my girlfriend was hot enough. I mean, it all sounds super shallow, but I have to tell you all the truth. I would be at parties and I would just drink and just like trying to find my self confidence in the bottom of a bottle or a beer, like that I'm okay, that like I am whole, I am enough, I'm good. And I noticed like, man, when I drank, like I felt like I was, or like when I remember the first time I smoked weed, I felt like I was a part of, I felt like I was accepted, I felt like I said the right things. And there was a couple of times to where, man, I would say stuff and it hit just right. I don't know if you've ever been there in life to where like you sip a beer, you smoke some weed, or maybe you're out with the girl or whatever it is, and you hear yourself say something, you're like, God damn, I did that one right. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
I got to duplicate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The expectations to perform in sports with girls, do you think that was coming from yourself, coaches, parents, friends? Yes, to all of it. Why do you think you felt that need to be such a high achiever? Yeah, let's start with that.
ooh, man. I don't know. I really don't know. I think that a lot of them, I think it's a yes. I think it's an overarching yes to everything you just said. Definitely felt it from coaches, felt it from, the family stuff. And family, nothing crazy, just like wanting me to like be well and like do good in school. But I think the most aggressive expectations came from within. And I think that's the journey of life, is like, we're driven by and prodded along by these sometimes fears or expectations that we're supposed to show up like this or be. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier is, man, today I feel like I'm a lot more keen to understanding what those are and like what's driving me. But like for a period of my life, I didn't even understand what was driving me. The fear of not being accepted, the fear of not having a girlfriend, the fear of, not doing well in school, or, if I did do well, it wasn't good enough. But like all of this was the internal dialogue that would drive all of my actions, like subconsciously. Like I didn't even realize that, well, I got to do this, and it just made sense to me. But I was being driven by mostly fear and a lot of expectations that I had placed on myself. Yeah.
Do you think, in thinking back and observing your parents, did you maybe observe either your mom or your dad or both putting those same expectations on themselves, and maybe in just observing them as a child, you sort of learned it through observation?
I think, well, I mean, I want to kind of go off on a little tidbit here too.
You're not allowed to do that. Yeah, please do.
I want to say something to this effect. I think this is something too that's really important, part of my story that I want people to know about, specifically with minorities. My family, my dad went to school, my mom went to school, both educated, black people, and you know, the pressure that comes with minorities specifically to achieve when maybe those opportunities weren't always available. There's a whole nother set of, and I think not just with the black community, but I think any race or even any group of people, and even if it's like with socioeconomic status, like, hey, like we grew up poor and like now we're middle class or whatever have you, and you have these opportunities, there's a pressure that comes with that is like, hey, we didn't even have these opportunities, dude. You have the opportunity to go to school. You have the opportunity to pursue, whatever schools. So those that come, and I hope that whoever's listening now, I mean, there's definitely some people who I'm sure have felt that, like, it doesn't matter what race you are, but like that pull when, opportunity wasn't available, now opportunity is abundant, the parents definitely, I believe they are going to make that known that like, hey, you have a unique set of circumstances that weren't available to us or your ancestors. And for us, I mean, that was definitely a part of the conversation. You know, I grew up well-to-do. You know, my dad, finance guy. My mom worked for AT&T, accounting woman, and just, you know, they met at Sam Houston State, and you know, so both of them did college. But like as far as multiple generations in my family that had gone to college and had married, where both of them had gone to college and were able to, hey, this is just the availability of understanding, you know, financial literacy. What do we do when we get these opportunities? How do we move? I mean, just I feel like, you know, a lot of my dad's side, a lot of my mom's side, I think just, I mean, I don't, for lack of better words, just like ignorance around what to do when we even get opportunities. You know, I feel like we still get that too, is like a lot of people, you know, opportunities come, or like, you know, there was most recently, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, most recently, finished up my bachelor's, about to start my master's, and I'm considering going to get my MBA. And I was talking to my friend of mine, and I was like, hey man, you know, hopefully I can get into McCombs. Like, it'd be super sick. I'd love to do McCombs. And then immediately when I started researching, I was like, it's $100,000 to go to McCombs' MBA. And then through substance abuse and like relationships that I've been over the last year, I know a chiropractor. Shout out to, do a little plug right here. Shout out to what's his name, Dr. John in Kerrville. He's anyways. So I went to do a chiropractor. He did an adjustment, and I was talking to him about this NBA stuff and a couple cracks here, and he has this beautiful method to where he talks to you. Yeah. He's talking to you. It's just like you know, you're moving it along. And like at the end of it, you're like, thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, but like, you know, his dad was a doctor. He's a doctor. But immediately when I was talking to him about, hey, I'm thinking about pursuing my MBA, these are the things I'm considering, do it. No hesitation. Like, if you have to like take out loans, do it. Buddy, you'll see that money back. Don't worry about it. Do it. And like just having that type of, and I'm not saying my family doesn't have that, but I think that that's an advantage. It's something that minorities and people who just haven't had those type of opportunities yearn for, the experience for someone to say, dude, don't let that sticker price scare you. Pursue it. I know a million people who have had, you know, that type of debt and they've bounced back. You're fine. If you get the opportunity, you go. But I said all that to say, you know, my family, I believe there are a set of pressures that come with, you know, specifically minorities who have opportunity now, and it always hasn't been present in their families. And because, like, you know, in situations like with Dr. John, where, you know, it's just the next thought, of course, yeah, you take out the loan and you'll be okay. To where my family is like, hey, you know, you're in a position now to where you have opportunities like that. You need to pursue them, because we haven't always had opportunities or people to say, hey, that's the next thing to do. We're just people who just trying to get by, you know, black people that are just saving and, you know, I mean, not getting into, you know, all the stuff from the past, but, you know, a lot of black culture, I mean, you start talking about mental health is, you know, just making sure that we take care of our families and we're not, you know, causing any trouble or anything like that. And we want to make sure that everything is that kosher, but like aspiring to, you know, attribute wealth to the family or financial literacy or anything like that. Like that's an even smaller percentage. And I think that also, I said that to say, you know, it also confused me a lot, because when I was in high school, you know, my family, we have, you know, some land in East Texas. We have cows. And, you know, my dad grew up, we were talking, you know, he'd take me out to the farm, and like I couldn't go to parties sometimes on the weekends because we had to go to the farm on Saturday morning. And when I would wear boots to school, you had a group of people in like Plano, which would be like, you know, equivalent of like Westlake, and we're all black, we're all minorities. What mass media is pushing is, to be a successful black person or minority, you need to sag your pants, rap, you can be an entertainer, you can be a hooper, You can be a sports person, but an accountant and financial, like that's not stuff that's talked about. It's not promoted. It's like you can be a great entertainer, you can be, but like as far as like being, owning a ranch or stuff like that's not what's pushed. So the kids, when we were like 15 or 16, and I wear boots or like, bring that culture to school. They're like, "What are you doing? You're dressing like a white boy." You know what I mean? Why are you asking like a white kid? And when by the grace of God, my dad's dad used to like was in real estate and sold ranches, and then he was able to leave a ranch, and then my dad got into finance, and we did even bigger ranch, and now we've got like over 60 head of cattle and like 300 acres. But that's the culture, is like we've done like ranching and farming, and but like when I went to school, everyone believed that, once again with expectations, this is the way that a successful or a popular black kid should show up. He should have sagging pants. He should be wearing Air Force Ones. He should be barely making it to class. I mean, that's what mass media was pumping, right? And like even the kids, all of us went to Plano, or like a nice area, like a suburb of Dallas, and it was crazy because you had kids that were trying to act whatever kind of way, like trying to act like they were from the hood or whatever, like, and it's like, dude, like we're not from the hood, and it's okay, and thank God, because there's not other people who have the opportunities that we have to go and bring the culture that we bring, and the ideals that black people bring. I mean, even in my company today, like I'm one of a few black guys, and I believe like my background and the way that I approach, even though I'm educated, allows me to be more effective in the roles that I have, because it's not just the same perspective that people might get with just other races. I'm able to kind of bring a different perspective. So I talked about a lot of subjects, but what I wanted to say is that in high school, yes, I felt pressures from the parents to utilize the opportunities that we had. I also felt, I think that's what I was doing, was hopefully trying to weave all these in, but I felt pressures from the friend group, specifically the minorities, that we needed to show up as entertainers, stars, football stars, and that was the only way we could shine. It wasn't cool to be, studying or like trying to go and be a financial planner or doctors. And I think that that's a huge disparity for minorities, is the fact that we haven't made it cool yet to go be a doctor or an accountant and do some of those things that are not just publicized, but like just really strong jobs that would hopefully like bring our community up. And I mean, I'm going to say it. I mean, there a lot of times when you see minorities, specifically blacks, it's on TV, like on the ground getting arrested, or they're dunking a basketball, but just not very often do you see like, hey, here's a VP of business banking, or here's this guy, he's a black lawyer. We just don't get portrayed like that. And I think for us and all minorities, and just really for the well-being of the country, world, for us all to kind of ascend, like that's the next thing, is like education and making sure that we are I don't know, just pursuing other things in life aside from entertainment and like the surface level things. There's so much to pursue. So that's how I was raised. And then mass media said, be a hooper, and I'm like, there's a clash here. Why are they saying this at home? And then my friends in mass media is telling me like I need to be a rapper slash hooper to be successful.
Yeah. Where do you sit with those expectations today? So if mass media is saying one thing and even your colleagues are saying another thing, is there a part of you where you almost want to, not necessarily, let me rephrase that actually. Does it phase you anymore? If mass media or culture or wherever the pressure is coming from is saying one thing, do you find that you can pretty independently do what you have set your mind to, or do you still feel that pressure to sort of do what society, culture, friends are telling you is the quote unquote thing that you should be doing?
I think today I have no other choice, like through sobriety, like that's why I'm so thankful, is like, man, with through the journey that I went on, and I don't think it just had to be this is for anybody who goes on their journey. Maybe it's depression, maybe it's mental health, whatever have you. On the other side of it, and at the beginning of this, you're asking like, who do you think this affects? Like anyone who's going through whatever journey, and you feel like it's what mine produced, and like when I'm coming out of the tunnel and starting to see like a new version of myself, a new light. What I would say is like, man, with me, I have to live a version of myself that is not dependent on the expectations of others. That's the only way that I can be okay with me. Like that's, you know, aside from substances, like I can't lean on substances anymore. I can't lean on other people's opinion of me. I have to be okay with who I am, and I believe that's in that there's so much freedom, and like with that, man, the superpower that it gives you, and I want y'all to hear me when I say this, the superpower that it gives you is confidence in earnest, like true confidence. I know who I am because I work out the way that I work out, because I study the way that I study, because I know the products that I'm selling better. I know that I've vested this time in it. I believe in myself, and there's nothing else that my confidence is propped up on. And when you have that, people can smell it on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you, how old were you when you took your first drink? Do you remember?
I probably had a first sip maybe when I was like, maybe call it like maybe 6 or 7, and super curious, man. I saw him drinking the stuff and laughing and yucking it up, and I'm like, man, there's a correlation. And I'm sneaking around like, come on, man, let me get a sip. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And I definitely got some sips, but I wouldn't say that I wouldn't attribute my struggles to those sips. I would attribute my struggles to, and I think that, the macro thing is it's like, man, you drink enough water and you drown. I believe that happens across the board. It's like you only can find a mechanism that you can juice for so long before it ends up becoming poisonous.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of families spend a lot of time investigating, where did we go wrong? Why is he like this? And I think the place that I meet a lot of families is I'll come alongside and I say, be that as it may, we're here now. This is how we move forward. Here's the treatment. Let me help y'all. Let's get him going back on track. But investigating specifically what happened, if there was a breaking point, I feel like people, and I think this can work on so many levels. People, they go and they say, where was it? What was the one thing? Okay, we identified the one thing, but we still have to live in the hereafter. Help me with the hereafter. Help me find different things that help me in the hereafter. Training, my education. I take my sleep cycle really seriously now. The process to prepare myself. I take my personal development so very serious now. Like I wake up early, I hit the gym. When I leave the gym, I'm driving back home. I might take some calls. I go, I do a protein shake, egg whites, protein powder, put in, some lion's mane, whatever vitamins, and take a shower. And at about like 8:15, 8:30, I have like a notepad, and I'm like, right now I have several subcategories between, the treatment center I work for. I'm going to plug TLR. Hopefully they're happy about that. The Last Resort, located in Smithville, Texas. Fantastic treatment center. It's all male, gender specific, fantastic. But I have a tab for TLR. I have a tab for Texas Sober Living. I'm the director of Texas Sober Living, which is a group of sober living homes in Ingram, Texas. That's where men just kind of come after life events, whether it be, treatment centers, it might be jail, might be prison. It's like, once again, in those hereafters, what do we do? Like, all right, how do I start, developing a relationship with my kids again? How do I go get a job? And I believe that I'm super close to spirituality experiences with these guys, because I believe it's a lot more tangible than what I thought it was. I used to think spirituality was like this airy thing, and like I had to like, get myself in the right mood to reach out and have a spiritual experience. As to where today, and I'll come back to what I was saying, but as today, my idea of it, when I'm working in Texas Sober Living and I see guys come in and maybe they've been homeless, or maybe they've coming from jail or treatment, those moments to where they've been living a certain lifestyle, they've been homeless, they've been in jail, whatever have you, and we say, hey, to live here, you got to go look for a job. You got to kind of start working the program of AA. You got to start making some changes, the hereafter. And I'll see them smoke cigarettes and pace on our front porch. It's just like anything, like when me and you were looking for a job or the next big jump, those moments to where it's like, I've told everyone about it. I've prayed about it. I've done whatever preparation process. And before you walk out that door, I believe the moment that you say, okay, and you go and you're all in, like you're actually out there doing the deal. Like, I mean, what you've done with this podcast, and like you bought the stuff and the lights, and like you actually, as aside from like, hey, I think I'm in a podcast, and like going and doing it, I believe that those are the moments that culminate like who we are, like our purpose, like what make, like that's so important. Like I hope everyone hears that. Those moments to where you've been chewing on an idea, or you're about to jump and you're about to start working on your next piece, pushing through and being willing to take that first initial step, that's everything. I believe that's life, man, the next piece of the journey, because stuff happens and then you have the hereafter, and it's like, well, it was like this and this is what it was. And I spent a lot of time in shame and just disbelief that this is where I was, and self-loathing. And I believe a large part of my journey was is like, man, once I recognized it and I saw it in others that they had been to similar places and made it back, I can do that too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Did you like yourself when you were a teenager?
For a period of time, I think I fell out of love with myself around that age I was telling you about, man.
Like 15, 16?
15, 16. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I told you about, at the beginning of this, I told you guys about the purest version of myself, me 7, holding a baseball bat. I had a gap in my smile. I didn't have a perfect smile, but I just had the biggest smile, man. And I didn't care about all this stuff. This was my smile. I play baseball. I love who I am. They say take a picture. I'm cheesing. Here, you know. And somewhere in between there, by the time I was 15 or 16, I remember walking into the cafeteria, or like these different pods where everyone would gather and kind of determine these different status rankings and popularity and all that. And I was pretty popular, but in my mind's eye, I wasn't popular enough. And I should have been on varsity as a freshman. And I should have, all these different things going through my head. And just a overwhelming sense of inadequacy.
During that time, who was your best friend?
I had a group of friends, Marcus, Zane, Nabras, and Travis. I still keep up with most of them to this day, but that was our group, and I think we were, you know, we were all minorities. We were all black dudes, you know, but, you know, Nabras was African and Saudi Arabian, so he was like a light-skinned, like mixed dude. Zane was Jamaican. We didn't know too much about his culture. We just knew his dad was really strict. We just knew he had a strict dad, bro. We used to play, and his dad would be like, "Get home now," and he would like take off on his bike. Like we're talking about the crew, so like Nabras, Zane, Travis was from Louisiana. Super proud of like Louisiana, loved Louisiana, and then there was me, and yeah, we just kind of had like it was this one-off group of guys, and like my friend groups. I think as I grew older, like I always had friends, and still to this day I have buddies that I work out with, guys that I talk about school with, intellectuals that I love to just kind of rap with. Like, what do you think about this? And like go on walks with, and I just had different groups of friends. But as far as like core group, I just listed them off now, and that's who I kind of did middle school and high school with. We would like share about girls and like, you know, aspirations and all that type of stuff. And I've done a pretty good job. I've kept up with most of them. We're in a group text now, you know, and it's the coolest thing to, you know, I think about us, and we have a picture of us when we were maybe 15, 16, and then now like we're approaching 30, and like I can't believe that it's like that was, I think your perspective just like keeps opening up, man. You're like, you know, when he was 21, I remember 3 years or a year was like colossal. And then now like a year feels like 6 months, or like you do like quarterly planning, or you're like getting ready for the year. And then it's 6 months in, and it's like, we're halfway through the year. Yeah. And it's like, hey, it's holidays and like these huge milestones. You're like, oh my God. And it's like, it seems like time is speeding up. And that might be because my perspective is getting larger. I don't know.
What's the name of your high school that you went to?
Plano East Senior High.
So let's say you walked into Plano East Senior High, and it's the middle of the day, it's lunch break. You walk into the cafeteria, and you were hypothetically to sit down with Marcus and Zane and DeBras and Travis, and you opened up to them and said, boys, I've been feeling this like overwhelming sense of inadequacy over the last couple days, weeks, months. If you had to attempt to get into their heads, what do you think their reaction would have been to that statement?
Man, I'll keep it real with y'all. I mean, I feel like sometimes people get like super philosophical, but I'll tell you, I don't think we were ready for it then. If we're talking about then,
Yeah.
we were super, I mean, that mechanism, and hopefully I can help like some of the young guys too. I want you guys to understand there's a mechanism, or there was a mechanism amongst us as boys, and you guys understand it too, the one-upping that grows, that, I mean, it happens from youth, right? Like, he climbs a tree. Now you climb the tree next to that's bigger. You jump off of this. I go on the diving board higher and jump off and do a flip.
Yep.
And we had kept playing that game through high school. So we were like, roasting each other and like, man, what are you doing? Like our biggest adversaries were inside of our friend group, I think. I don't think that like it was like the version of high school to where you were like, oh, like those group of guys don't like us. I think it was us trying to be cooler than the other people in the friend group and climb whatever hierarchy. And like most of like the criticism came from within our own cell that was our friend group, because we were, you had whatever influences from outside and mass media and what different people had kind of told us. And then you come back and it's like, man, you can't go do that because this. And, I think it comes back to something we were talking about earlier. The influence and what I cared about most was probably those guys, but none of us knew anything at that point. I think I got to tell some of the young guys that too, man. Like, if you're pursuing something or if you're passionate about something, you might have a group of friends, but I wouldn't test everything that you're doing in life and the direction that you're doing in life just based off of what the homies say. Like, the homies are great and stuff, but I can just tell you now in reflection that we were so misguided on so many things, and we have laughed about it later now. Just like on, like if you want to keep it like the most realistic one is like, I remember I was like dating one chick, and they were like, "Man, why are you dating her? Like, she's not cute." And then you found out like years later, like, "Yeah, bro, I was talking to her too on the low." Like they thought she was attractive too, bro. You know what I mean? I'm like, what? Yeah.
When did that's a good point. That I wouldn't have had that conversation with my friends either. I guess another way to rethink about the question is, so often I think that we have our own perception of what's going on around us. Mm-hmm. That if you had had that conversation with them, do you think they would have had any idea that you were feeling that way, or do you think most of it was stories that you were telling yourself inside your own head?
I think that most of it was stories that I was telling within my own head. And then also, you add their comments, and it may not have been, I would say maybe 10% of it was like roasting like us, like, "Hey man, why'd you do that?" Getting on each other, playing the dozens, some people call it. But I think it was maybe 10% of that, and then 90% of the thoughts that I put on myself, and then also based off of like comments that other people would say. "I can't believe he wore this," or "I can't believe he said this," or "I can't believe he's dating her," or "Man, he's dumb for doing this." And like, you would hear those comments, and then you go back to your corner of the earth and you're like, okay, I got to make sure that I don't come across like that, because they were talking down on him, or and I just didn't realize how much effect that had. But I think those, along with at that point in my life, I was not very open. I've found so much healing in being vulnerable and honest with strangers or people that you trust, but you have to have someone that you can process with, because we are not our thoughts. That's something that I've heard in like counseling. I work in behavioral health now. Such a good like nugget, man, and like I wish I could have given that to like the 15-year-old version of myself. We are not our thoughts. And like a lot of the times, man, like those got to be flushed out. They got to have space to like get out there and really put them under the microscope to see if they're legitimate or if they have merit. Today I do a lot of journaling. I have deep conversations. Like, this is a long form, but like there's a buddy of mine, pretty much every Sunday I'll be like, "Hey bro, do you this Sunday?" Like, I'll just text him that. And that's a space to where we like go on a walk. Like it's healthy. Maybe 2 hours just like this. We don't have mics and stuff, but it's like no holds barred. You know, how's the wife? How's this? How's work? I'm stressing about work. They don't value me. I'm this, or I want this promotion, or I want this at home, or we're going on vacation. And like, you need space to do that. I don't think that gets promoted enough, man. Even if you're not seeing a counselor, just the balm that is giving your thoughts a space to breathe.
Yeah. I probably won't go into detail because I want this episode to stay around you. But to your point, there was something that had been weighing on me for about 2 months, and I've been wanting to talk about it with my workout buddy. And when we're in the gym, man, we have so much dang fun that part of the reason I didn't bring it up was just because that's our fun time where we get to be, as men, we just get to play. We get to go lift heavy shit, put it back down. You know, it's a great time of day. And a couple Tuesdays ago, I hit him up and said, hey, what time are we going tonight? He said, you know, I can't go. I got some stuff to take care of. And I said, listen, you know, I've actually been wanting to talk to you about something that's been on my mind for a couple of months. Is there any chance I could come over to your place? I can help you with the stuff you're working on. We could just sip some coffee and could we talk for a couple hours? And he said, sure. And so I went over, talked with him about the stuff that had been on my mind. And there is something about just verbally getting it out there. No solution had actually been presented itself in the moment. And he asked me some pointed questions, but even on his side, you know, he didn't necessarily have a solution for me per se, but there is just a breath of fresh air when something has been living in your head for days, weeks, months, and then you verbalize it for the first time, and you just feel like 100 pounds have been taken off you. It's wild.
Man, I think that, you know, you always hear the term like normalize this, normalize that. Let me say this. I think that we need to encourage specifically men, and I think there was, you know, from some of the stuff we were talking about, men, that it is okay to process. And even if it's like in a small group or if it's a buddy, a gym buddy, but going to do that, because for me, the version of manhood that I grew up is you take it on the chin and you keep soldiering. And I've seen so many guys just, I mean, for lack of better words, just crash out, just break down, with that mentality of just soldiering on. And like, guys are, I mean, they're hurting and they need a process. And like, man, even if it's just like what you said, it's like, man, this person doesn't need to be a PhD or someone. The healing effect is the fact that sometimes even when I'm just saying the stuff out loud, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Right. That's crazy. You need to hear it. Yeah. But in your head, it's reality, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, similar situation. This was not a problem, but something with the podcast related had come up, and I was debating if I wanted to pivot right or left with it. And last Saturday, same walk I mentioned to you that I go on the weekends, I talked about it out loud for a friend with 5 minutes, and I got to my answer. I was like, dude, you didn't even need to say anything.
Thank you. And then you just walk out.
Yeah, basically. To sort of reset a little bit here, as I think I told you on the phone that about 65% of the audience is individuals that are 24 years or younger. So it's a pretty young audience, or at least over half of them is pretty young. And based off a lot of conversations I have with dudes at my gym that are 15 to 18 years old, you know, kids are experimenting a lot with alcohol, weed, caffeine, porn, all of it. And so to help give them some perspective, could you talk to me a little bit about your own story? And
Yes.
that, I know you mentioned you had a couple of sip when you were like 6 or 7,
Yes.
but when you were 15, 16, 17, would you mind talking a little bit about when you started drinking more and sort of what I'm trying to lead you to without just forcing you to talk for 45 minutes straight is eventually the end goal is, you know, to how you found out you wanted to get sober and sort of all that in between stuff.
Yes. And man, it's my pleasure to share that stuff with you guys. And I hope it helps some people. 15 or 16, just to kind of give you guys just snapshots of just like what's going on. And hopefully like I can portray like my mental space. So I think I've done a good job of kind of explaining where I was mentally at 15 or 16, all this inadequacy, just where I was at. And then I would go out to parties and, you know, I had girlfriends in high school, but I always, you know, and I hope this resonates with some of y'all, I always felt like it wasn't enough. I always felt like, man, you know, my grades weren't good enough. I wasn't starting early enough to be a kid prodigy. I wanted to be a prodigy in everything. It's ridiculous, right? Prodigy, women slayer, freaking varsity phenom. I need to go D1 at like 15. Like they just pulled me out of high school. Like crazy expectations now that I think about it. And like, I think, we're laughing about it, but I think it's important. Like, man, find mentors and people who have walked the path before. And like, hopefully they can like tell you like what's realistic. Because like for me, this was all the stuff that was living in my head. I mean, I remember the other day when I was 18, I was convinced that, I was going to come up with some brilliant idea, start a company, and be like a millionaire by the time I was like 22, 23, like just a prodigy. Like we had seen movies and heard these like one-off stories. And like also too, when you see the stuff online or you see mass media to where the guy hit an amazing, hit his shot and, the amazing company that came out of nowhere and all that, those are incredible stories and those people should be celebrated. But I think that we need to also celebrate the consistent, diligent work. That story is a lot more common to where guys sacrificed and talk about what it looks like to walk through your dreams and what it looks like pursuing them. But at 15 and 16, what I'm getting at is that when I was 15, 16, 17, I wanted to be a prodigy in everything. And the fact that I wasn't a prodigy left this big gap where I felt like I was inadequate. And to get to feeling like I was the man, I would use alcohol and other substances to hopefully close the gap. And I know you were asking about the drinking, and I'll definitely give y'all some stories. Like I don't mind that, but I want you guys to understand the mental gymnastics, where I'm at, where I'm living at daily, why I'm moving the way I'm moving, what's going on. I want to be a kid prodigy because that's the only thing that will suffice, and like that's the only thing that's worth it. Like if I'm going to be anything, I got to be a prodigy, and the stark realization that when I approach my friend group every day, the circle, the group of guys, high school, that I am not that. And so at parties, man, I would go and I would drink beer and alcohol, whatever else they had. And I mentioned earlier, we have a ranch, and on Saturday mornings, I would go out with my dad, and I knew that I had to get back home to go do that. We had certain responsibilities to go do that, feed the cows, all that good stuff. But on Fridays and Saturdays, and I'll be honest, my parents were divorced. My mom was a lot more laid back. On Fridays, I would go and try to get all that I could out of those occasions. And I wanted it to be just like, he's got a dog here named Dad. I wanted it to be like Blue Mountain State. I wanted to have the crazy night to where I drink beer and meet the girl and all the things happen in one night. I thought that I thought it happened like that. I thought it was all to be got in high school, in college. And I think this parallels with both of them. I want to say this, man. I work with a lot of men and talk with a lot of people. You're not going to get it all in one whop. I wanted a night. I wanted an experience to where I could extract all of life in one whop. Get it all right now. I'm going to get it all in this drinking. I'm going to get it all in doing coke. I'm going to get it all in taking these pills. I'm going to get it all in this, pursuing this woman. I can get all of life in one shot. And if I can encourage anyone or discourage, buddy, it's just not like that. And normally it's the culmination of different situations and sacrifices that you made. And there'll be, today, now that I'm sober, I'll be driving through West Austin over here to do a podcast, and I'm looking at Mount Bunnell and the sun and all that, and I say, oh my God, it's happening. I remember when I was homeless. Like I can't believe that it's gotten here, that we've come this far. I can't believe that it went that far, and I can't believe that I've come this far. So that's 15 and 16. That's why I'm drinking the way that I'm drinking. I'm sneaking and drinking without getting into all the crazy stories. I'm sneaking and drinking. And I think the craziest thing that happened in high school was, I remember I was driving back home, and I was, my friend, their parents would say, hey, don't drink and drive. And I had this, I'm going to say this is really crazy. I had this fascination with getting away with it. And and it's really messed up, and no one talks about it. I think it's a thing that happens, but like I would party, and I knew I was supposed to be home, and I had to go to the ranch the next day, so knew I was not far away from home, and I drink just enough to where I would, you know, come back home, get back in, and hold everything at bay. Hold all the different pieces at bay. And I think that's something that's a big part of my story is like I would have this double life to where I would go and do school. I would be this way on the ranch. And then when I would go to parties, I would go and try to get everything that I missed in between. And I was trying to get back home to maintain the rest of that. I had to keep everything else over here at bay so I could go and live the way that I wanted to live on Friday nights. And man, I remember driving back home and there was like a guardrail and like almost like I'm on a bridge, like I'm on 75 in Dallas and I'm coming back, and there's there's on the highway they have these where it's like indentations to where if you get over too far it starts making the rumbling noise.
Yeah.
I remember being just super out of it, and like one night I heard the rumbling noise and I'm on 75 or George Bush going over 75, and I hear the rumbling noise and I'm like, oh my God, like if I didn't get back right, like I could be over, like you see the news stories and just different tragedies. I was like, man, I could have easily died right here. And I hate to say it, but I mean, over the course of the next 10 years, there were so many moments to where I felt like an impending sense of doom. Like if I keep living the way that I'm living, I'm going to die. There's going to be a terrible accident. I feel like, like my obituary was like close by. My mom was going to be buried. Everyone was going to be crying. I just felt an impending sense of doom. Like this is not going to work out good. And that was high school, man. I remember almost crashing there. And by the time I made it to Arkansas, I went to the University of Arkansas. Man, I was out there with a couple of buddies. I wasn't playing sports anymore. I had written off sports because I didn't end up becoming a D1 prodigy. I had some offers to go play JUCO ball and maybe like some D2s and stuff like that. But what we were obsessed with, and some of my friends that played sports, was going D1. I wanted to go D1 so bad. And if I didn't have the highest order of that, then I didn't want to go and work on something at a JUCO and build it into a baseball career. I wanted it to be, once again, all in one whop. I got to be D1 playing for Oklahoma or Alabama right now. And, when I go off and say I'm going to school, it needs to be the highest version of that. And I think it was just so unrealistic with my expectations. And I want to tell you guys sometimes, man, you get a piece of clay and it's not all the way molded it. You got to work on that thing and turn it into something that's incredible. But very rarely in life do you get a ready-made, beautiful situation.
Yeah.
You got to like cook on it. You got to work on it, man. You got to invest in it. And I think that's what personal training, I think that's with our bodies, I think that's with our education. But I discarded several opportunities to keep working on my sports stuff because it wasn't a ready-made D1 scholarship. And I was 17 years old when I graduated. I turned 18 in the summer. But I told y'all to say that. I said that because when I got to the University of Arkansas, I just had no purpose, no idea what I was doing, who I was, where I was supposed to go. Aside from like school, man, I just kind of settled in to a group of homies. Like we all smoked like weed and drank and like chased after girls and like did as much school as we had to. And I remember like taking Adderall. I remember like a word of caution for like the Adderall bros, the Vyvanse bros, right? Because like it gets downplayed. Like it's not like a hardcore like, oh, I'm banging heroin or I'm doing coke or whatever. Like it's an Adderall. It's prescribed by a doctor.
Yeah.
To the bros that seek out Adderall, whether it's like through a prescription or like you have a homie who has like a script and he hooks you up. In high school, I started taking Vyvanse, and I didn't realize, Vyvanse, Adderall, similar, just different compounds, but similar effects. I didn't realize that I was building up addict-type behaviors. I remember being like a junior in high school, and there was a chick who had Vyvanse, and I would purchase her Vyvanse, and there were a couple of times where she was late to school or she had been out late or like, and I'm waiting in the hallway like, man, all right, like I'm supposed to meet this chick, and she's late And she's like, I'll be there in 10 minutes. And like, I hear the bell go ring, and these are all different alarms. And like the same thing can be like shown in my life. These are all alarms that would have normally been like, hey bro, like it's time to go to class, or it's time to like ditch or whatever it is. Like we had a couple of alarms like, hey, there's, the first bell was like, school starts in like 5 minutes. And then there was another one that's like school has started. And these metaphorical bells going off parallel with the different ethical, moral alarms that I had going off in me in college and high school. So I was waiting for her. School bell goes off that you got to get to class. The on time bell goes off. The late bell goes off. And I'm waiting in the hall for her to give me a Vyvanse, because if I don't have Vyvanse, then I'm not the best version of me. And I didn't realize that I'm starting to, be late for class. I'm spending money on waiting, and I didn't realize the pull. I just thought that I was a driven kid who knew that if you take Vyvanse, you perform better on your tests, and performing good on your tests is good anyway. Yeah. And I feel like I'm more personable and a better person, and it's Coop 2.0. And Coop 2.0, chasing Coop 2.0 lasted 10 years until I had to have a reckoning with, hey, dude, this is killing you. You're going to end up in prison or die chasing this better version of yourself through chemicals and outside things. It has to be from within. You can't shortchange this thing. I say this to anyone. You can't find a roundabout. Like, your true confidence, who you are, has to be manifest in the work that you do in yourself and the journey that you're on. And I remember waiting on her, and some days she would be late, and I would forego just like all the different things that were important to me, being, I didn't want to be tardy. And anyways, that right there is a good picture of how college kind of started happening, to where, man, I started out smoking weed, and I was taking Adderall to help me with school, and then I'm taking Adderall to drink more beer. And then I remember one night, and this was a big turn. I remember one night they're like, hey, we're going to get barred out. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. And they're like, everyone's taking Xanax. They took like a half of a Xanax, and like we took that and we all drank on top of it. And we were inside of a dorm room, and man, I felt smooth. I felt like a smooth operator. You know what I'm saying? Man, I had taken Xanax. It took the edge off, and I chased it with a beer, and I felt my shoulders drop. And of the things that I had done, that was, I felt like, if you've ever seen the movie Flight, like with Denzel.
Yeah.
That walk, when he's coming out of the hotel at the opening scene.
In the very beginning.
That's how I felt, man.
Yeah. Good analogy for those who have not tried it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
That's how I felt. And whoever hasn't seen it, it's like, man, it's this beautiful scene. It's Denzel Washington, movie Flight. He does like a line of coke. He's in there with the stewardess. He's like a pilot, and he's like all busted up and wakes up in the morning. He's hungover. He does a line, and the next scene you see him put on his glasses, and he's got his full, pilot garb, and he's walking. He's got his walk, and he's smooth, and he's pulling his luggage behind him, and he's the man. That scene like lets you know he's the man.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt when I took Xanax that first night. It's like, man, I know what to say. I'm funny. I feel smooth with the girls. And I'd always like had a relationship with girls, but that night I felt like I was freaking money man. I had everything dialed. I felt smooth. I felt good. I felt accepted. And that feeling, the most important thing that I want to point out is that feeling of inadequacy that had been plaguing me for like the years before, and like middle school, high school, was gone. It immediately had been lifted, and I was like, this is it. I found it.
I remember the first time I watched that movie, I think I was just cruising around Netflix looking for something to turn on while I was folding laundry and doing dishes. And within 10, 15 minutes of that movie starting, doing laundry had stopped, doing dishes had stopped, and I just planted myself right on the couch, had Dad come sit next to me. Mm-hmm. Dude, what a good movie. Sorry, quick side tangent.
No.
But I don't often get locked into movies like with that. And then at the end, I won't say what happened, but the scene in the hotel room.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was just the whole movie is such a fucking roller coaster.
Yeah, we won't do a spoiler alert.
No, we won't. Go watch Flight if you have not. After you finish this episode.
You got to.
Yes.
I've been in that hotel room before. I'll say that. I mean, we're kind of walking through like addiction. So college, man, I remember I had, what's it called? I took that first Xanax, and I remember a month later, I turned to my buddy and I said, "Is this stuff addictive?" I was like, "Yeah, bro. Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, dude." And I'm taking Xanax to where, and what thing about Xanax is like it's so powerful because it like you can black out. Like if you drink on it, you can black out, and man, you start for the bartards, some people, or the people who take Xanax and abuse it. I was losing days. I was losing days of time. Like I thought I'd come to, and it'd be. I remember I can cognitively remember Monday. I have a test on Friday, or I have a test on Wednesday. We'll say I need to study. I'm gonna play some basketball down at the rec, whatever. Coming to and having my next conscious thoughts. It's Thursday. What day is it? It's Thursday. I missed my test. I don't know what's happened for the last couple days. And like it would be this game of taking out my phone, looking through my text messages, looking at my past calls, looking at Snapchat, and putting back the pieces of like what had transpired over the last 72 hours. And I mean, at first it was a fun game, but then like you're addicted to it. Like you don't know why you're addicted. And I think that that's huge. Like we start talking about, the 12 steps and, how people get out of addiction. Like, the program, the first thing is even recognizing that you have a problem. That took me years. And there was people, I mean, I'll go into it, but my family approached me. My family did like a form of an intervention, all types of stuff. And like my biggest thing was that I'm not a drug addict or I'm not an alcoholic because I don't live under a bridge drinking out of a bottle. And I just want to say like that would be a lot of misinformation out there. I thought it also meant that I was a bad person. If I admit that I have a problem or I'm struggling with it, then I am a bad person because drug addicts are bad people and alcoholics are bad people. And so, I mean, man, while I was in college, dude, I was drinking and I kept pushing into this idea that you need to get your stuff together. You need to do better. You need to double down. You need to redouble your efforts, and then also, too, this obsession with the perfect mixture. And like you always hear guys talk about like the right spot, trying to get to a good spot. I was taking an Adderall with a quarter of a Xanax with 2 beers, and that will allow me to still be sharp and feel good. And then like this crazy incessant idea that I can mix things chemically to make me feel whole.
And this, I'm assuming, wasn't like on a Friday night. This was to get. Would this be to get you up and running on like a Tuesday morning?
Yeah, eventually it was. That's what it turned into, man. And like I remember, it used to be an event to go and get different drugs, Adderall, Xanax, whatever. And then it got to the point to where like, man, I would be asleep in my dorm and like I'm like reaching over inside of my like side table cabinet to pop an Adderall in and like wait for that bad boy to like hit. And then like 20 minutes later, I like, lights are on, let's do it. You know what I mean? Let's kill. And I'd wake up and like go. But then even in that, I think it's important to say, like we joke about it because I want to keep it light, but like I want you guys to understand, even when I was taking Adderall, and this is like, I don't want to come to you guys as like dad or like unc or any of this, but I just want to say like, even when I was taking Adderall, the thing to look at, like if you might have like, shout out to guy, like if you might have an Adderall problem, might have a stimulant problem, if you find that like you don't have purpose, like all right, cool, I'm yacked up on stimulants and I'm doing stuff, but am I doing stuff that is helping me move the needle forward, or am I just doing stuff to do stuff? I would, just like what you had talked about, man, like I mean, dude, we can talk about it. Like, dude, porn can be a rabbit hole. Like, you take enough Adderall, stimulants, you end up, instead of like doing your homework, you've watched an hour of porn, and then because you're taking Adderall, like you can't even get hard. I mean, it's crazy stuff, or it gets displaced in, I remember I would be like on Tinder or like on Snapchat, and I'm trying to hit up these girls and like say the perfect thing, and like dude, the drugs do not make you whole as a man. And like, I believe too, like, any other mechanism that I'm using to hopefully close the gap for self-confidence to feel like I'm okay, unless it's a genuine confidence that comes from work and the things that we've been talking about on here, like reading, education, working on yourself, all of those things are not going to be enough to fulfill what you needed to fulfill. So with drugs, the way that I had attacked everything else in my life, like, in squats, I was willing, like in high school, like I was squatting like 4 and some change. I was benching 3 and some change, incline, I'm like 275. And I was willing to pay the price. Like I was willing to pay the price of paying for advancement. I'd always been willing to do that. So with drugs and like with, just this ideal that I had, I was like, yeah, you have some hard knocks and you make some bad decisions and maybe you watch porn for an hour, but we got to double down, boys. You know what I mean? More Adderall. More Adderall. Yeah.
I remember this. I've talked about this 2 or 3 times to the audience. I apologize. I'm going to bring it up one more time. I was in the sauna one time, and there wasn't any seats left on the bench, and so I was standing up and leaning against the wall. And there's a guy who was sort of leaning forward, and he had his phone out like this, and he was taking a selfie of himself and then sending it to someone. I was able to. Her name was like Vanessa or something.
Yeah.
And he sent it to her, and the little red arrow, showing it sent, came up. And he would start pulling down on his screen. He's refreshing to see if she responded. And she didn't respond in like 8 seconds. So then he took another selfie and sent it to Sarah. Little red arrow comes up. It's sent. Refresh. Nothing. Took another selfie. Sent it to Margaret. Refresh. And in the moment, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Mm-hmm. In hindsight, I almost wish I had like leaned down so I was eye contact with him and was like, hey, brother.
Brother,
what are you looking for?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel bad for him, because that is a maybe drug would be a strong term, but he was clearly like looking for some sort of attention, validation, just like anything. I could tell in the moment, like he wanted or needed something. And dude, I do sort of wish I could have him on the podcast and be like, what's going on with you, dude?
I don't know.
Maybe not the podcast, but even just like, it would be so weird to be like, hey, I saw you snap 12 different girls in a 10-minute period. Can I take you out to coffee and talk about it? That's never going to happen. But it did just make me, I feel empathy for the guy to be like, just that natural curiosity in me wanted to be like, where are you at in life? What's going on? What's the good, the bad, and everything in between? Because I feel like it was something deeper than just getting a fucking picture back. Is. Like he was craving something in that moment, It
is. No, I think it's, and I think that's, and I hope y'all are patient with me, but the reason why I kind of keep jumping back, and like when I've ever done like any type of speaking events or like talked about my stuff, I want people are always like, give us stories, tell us about the fucking hookers and all the crazy stuff. I was like, first of all, there was never any hookers, but I do have like crazy stories, and it's like, for me, yes, like I don't mind sprinkling some of that stuff in there, but I want you guys to take away like what you had just said, David, which is like, man, what was driving this behavior, why I was doing this stuff was because like there was this overarching feeling of inadequacy. I didn't have any purpose, and the answer this time was not to double down on black. It wasn't. The answer was to release. And it's kind of like, part of release, what release looks like today is like what you talked about is like, man, being vulnerable, and there is strength and vulnerability in the fact that like you called your gym bro, and even though y'all couldn't lift, you were like going out on a limb, like he might say you're weird, and like I'm going to push some of you guys to do the same, but like, bro, like I need to talk about some stuff, bro. Like, can I do that with you? Yeah. And I think that it sounds like it helped.
Oh yeah. Yeah, tremendously.
Yeah, it helps, man. And like I say, release, whatever, and we can kind of talk about what that looks like, but I want you guys to understand, like for me, the ideas, the expectations, my view of myself, all those things I had to release to be reborn into the version of myself that I truly craved from the beginning. And I didn't even know what that version looked like. I didn't know how he talked. I didn't know how he walked. I didn't know how he dressed. I didn't know what job he did. And the journey of self-actualization is that it is a journey, and understand that it's not going to happen all in one day or at one event. And like, man, there's something inside of each one of you that is going to guide and pull you towards your purpose and like what you're here for. Don't fight that, and don't allow expectations or the homies or what you see on TV or like what's popular to take you off of that. Because, man, how I got into substance abuse and like working with men, like one-offs. I mean, just crazy stuff. And I'll tell you guys how I got there, but just not, I didn't point at the map and say, I'm going to move here, I'm going to do this. It didn't happen like that. Yeah. I had given up on myself, going through college. I ended up failing out. By the time I was, my first semester, I did all right. I held it down. My second semester, they had parties and the fraternities were doing their thing. And I was just trying to recreate Blue Mountain State every single night while being just a degenerate drinker, Xanax user. At this point, I'm using Coke, whatever. And I had no idea. Like, I tell you guys this too. Like, if you're the guy who goes and gets just hammered at the parties, what we have to understand, I don't think people talk about this enough. Girls, since they were, 13 or 14, have had a enormous responsibility. There's been guys ready to do stuff since they were like 13 or 14. And they've had to learn like, hey, no. And as to where when you're a guy, I really don't feel like the playing field gets leveled until like you're in your 20s and like you kind of come into yourself and you know what you're here for and what you do in your purpose. Like that's when maybe the playing field kind of levels out a little bit more. But when I was in college, my idea of like what was attractive to a female was so off. I would like get super drunk and like come and say, hey, like they don't want that, you know what I mean? And like I can't say exactly what women want. I don't think anybody knows, but I will say that like, man, me making a fool of myself and getting drunk and trying to say something smooth to them, pull up on them with a cool line or whatever was not it. And now that I'm like approaching 30, man, like when I talk to women, like just like, hey, I'm like, hey, I was like, yeah, like talking to them about their journey, about how they got to this moment in life, what's important to them, like having genuine, deep-seated conversations has been the best macking that I've ever had. You don't need to go up and say a cool line or anything like that. If you can be genuine and have a conversation around like, hey, what's going on with you? How'd you get here? Like, what's important to you? And like, honestly listen and not be so vested in what I'm going to say next. Like, really digest what they're saying. Dude, you will kill.
Yeah.
You'll kill, bro.
It's good advice right there.
Yeah.
What led you up to being homeless in that particular part of your story? And one thing I'll preface is, dude, one of the most eye-opening days of my life was when in early 2020 I got laid off from my job. Mm-hmm. And I had nothing but time on my hands. And so I started drinking at 4, started drinking at 3, started drinking at noon, ended up doing a 9-month stint in AA, so I know a little bit about the program.
Oh, cool.
But during that 9-month stint, there's a guy that wandered into the rooms one day of Alcoholics Anonymous, and his name was Christian. And he talked about that first night that he had just been walked up to Northern California from Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. He had been jumped and robbed and everything was taken from him. And as he was telling a story about why he came into the room that night, there was just something in me where I wanted to help him. And he showed up in another meeting that I went to. That first one I met him was on the Thursday. Second one I ran into him was a Sunday. Following Thursday, he wasn't in the rooms. Following Sunday, he wasn't in the rooms. About 2 weeks went by. I asked a couple of the dudes, hey, has anyone seen Christian recently? And they said, no. Last we heard, he was homeless, and he was hanging out, charging his phone next to a Raley's on the corner of Hazel and Highway 50. And I said, well, let's go find him. I was new and I didn't know like the quote unquote rules and whatnot. But the rest of the guys were like, well, no, that's not really how the program works. He needs to come to us. And I was like, well, that's fucked up. I'm going to go find my boy. And so I called my sponsor. I was like, hey, do you want to go with me? And he said the same thing. He's like, well, you know, he's sort of, and I was like, I don't want to go find him to get him back to AA. I just want to go offer to buy him lunch and talk with him for an hour. And then what he does after that meal is on him. So I drove out to Hazel and 50, went to the Rayleighs that they told me they saw him at. And walked around the Rayleighs, walked in the Rayleighs, asked the security guard if he knew where he was. He said, no, I know who you're talking about, but I haven't seen him in a couple days. But there's some other folks outside who might know him. So I went and found them. Long story short, spent about the next 3 or 4 hours talking to somewhere between 8 and 12 homeless individuals. And just hearing them... hearing their dude, like the very first guy I talked to, he was like, oh yeah, I know Christian. He brought me a bag of Fruit Loops and a carton of milk yesterday. He brought me breakfast. I was like, yeah, that sounds like my guy.
Dang.
And he took my phone number and he was like, if I run into him, I'll have him call you. And I said, perfect, thank you. Couple folks later, they said, yeah, we know who you're talking about. He was high on something the other day. He came running up to us, stole our backpacks, poured them out in the middle of the street, and then went running off in the other direction. It's like, oh, not a great moment for Christian, but okay. The one that hit me the hardest, though, that really was a moment where I felt like I met God, was when I was about to give up for the evening because a guy told me, hey, it's about to get dark out. You should really get out of here before the sun goes down. And so I would suggest heading out. I said, okay. So I'm driving down the street, heading back home, and I see another guy probably like 17 years old, with a sign in the middle of the intersection asking for money. I was like, that guy's way too young. I want to talk to one more guy. It was almost like an obsession because talking to so many different individuals, I was getting this perspective on homelessness that I'd never got in my life. And so I parked my car, hit the button for the crosswalk, went and joined him, and asked him about my friend first. I described him. I said, hey, have you seen him? He said, no, I have no idea who that is. And I said, dude, if you don't mind me asking, like, you know, you look like a strong kid. You look able-bodied. Like, it's none of my fucking business, but I don't know how else to ask. Like, why are you out here right now? And he said, dude, he's like, I don't want to be out here. As I stand here, I get to see every single person mean mug me from their car and look at me like I'm trash and like I'm filth. I spent the first 4 hours of my day applying to jobs, and now I'm out here getting as much money as I can so that I can keep a roof over me and my lady's head. And it just hearing him say, like, I don't want to be out here was just like, holy fuck. Like, I've never thought about that before. That a homeless person probably doesn't want to be fucking homeless. Like, no one wants that. No one desires that. That's not anyone's achievement. But it was just, I never found Christian. I moved to Texas before I left California. To this day, the last time I tried calling him, I got some sort of weird message. I think his phone was probably turned off, or I don't know, man. But I would love to and just be grateful to hear about how you got to that point in your story, because for the audience, I would just love to try to give them that similar perspective that I got, and what led you there and what sort of transpired to you not being homeless anymore and how you got out of it.
Yes. Yes, a lot to talk about.
Sorry, I threw so
no.
much.
It was
so
a lot to digest. I mean, shout out to Christian too. I hope he, does his thing and gets right. Yeah, for me, homelessness, what it looked like was like, man, I was at college. I think a lot of it too that doesn't get talked about is the mental place. I think it's kind of the overarching thing that we've kind of talked about today is like, where are you living? What's going on in your head? What's going on with you? And for me, I told you guys about high school, college. When I came back from college that summer, once again I was trying to get it all on one whop, and there was a concert that I went to, and I remember the expectations that I put on myself and just trying to show up cool, like I had been off to school or whatever. We go to this concert, and I remember these were all my buddies from high school, and I'll say this too, I lived on the east side of Plano, which was nice. It's Plano. But then there's the west side of Plano. The west side of Plano is Jerry Jones, retired football players, old money. I mean, the parties that they threw, crazy modern houses. I mean, just all types of stuff. And like, I grew up in a nice neighborhood, but it wasn't nothing like the west side. So I had friends that I played sports with and always kept in contact with. And when I came back from school, some of them had hit me up and said, we're going to this concert. It's going to be sick, whatever. Cool. We're going to tailgate and just like blow it out. they had bad females. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, yeah, I'll be there, And I remember, man, I got all dressed up and I went and got an 18-pack. I had like a fake ID at this point. And I go, tailgate happens, good time, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that. And on the ride home, or before I was leaving, me and a friend of mine, his name's Brad, we're walking back to my car, and the first warning sign, this is what we were talking about earlier with the alarms going off, was that I didn't know where the hell my car was. Like, I was destroyed. I didn't understand, because we were at a tailgate and there was cars around us, but I didn't understand where I had parked. We're walking around. Somebody had like a bottle of Taka, like on a tailgate, which, like, if you don't know, it's like probably the cheapest, worst, like, vodka, rum type of situation, maybe $8 a handle, something crazy. Or back then it was. And we snagged that and taking pulls off the Taka and passing it back and forth. And just stumbling around and like not knowing for like easily an hour. When you're that drunk, you really don't understand time. Time kind of gets warped. And I was like, we had stumbled around long enough to be like, oh, I didn't park here because the parking was like $100 because it's tailgate parking. I parked a mile down the road at some industrial factory where I probably got towed from, but that's where I parked. So I was like, come on, Brad, let's go. And we stumble out there and like, but that just goes to show like how messed up I was. And we get out there, I get in the car, I'm in my grandma's car, and we pull out of there. And I remember blacking out and like I was driving back. I had made it, like, it was bumper to bumper traffic. We're trying to get on the highway. Thank God I didn't get on the highway. I probably would have killed myself and him. But I rear-ended the car in front of me. And I remember coming to, and my window was down, and like there was like people coming up like, you piece of shit. They're up there like yelling at me and shit like that. And my knee-jerk reaction, remember, since I've been 14, 15, I've always been life number one, life number two. These two don't bleed into each other. Like, anything that would have rubbed, I was able to explain away. It wasn't that bad of a deal. But this was the first time in life where the realization that I was in over my head was apparent. And like, I panicked, man. I tried to reverse and my car was totaled. I tried to reverse. I would have tried to execute a hit and run. I can say that now. I mean, I'm comfortable with who I am, but I would have tried to do a hit and run. I put it in reverse and I'm revving the engine, but the front of my car is smashed. And the people outside the car can hear that I'm revving the engine. This piece of shit trying to leave, and like they're coming. And it really was a piece of shit thing to do. I can say that now. It was a real piece of shit thing to do. I'm revving the engine, and they're like, hey, he's trying to leave. And like, they're coming in there, they're like trying to pull me out of the car, like by my neck and stuff. And like, just like, arms coming in the car. I'm like, get off me, and dude, but in that moment too, like, after all that happened, the police showed up. Dude, the scariest scene in my life was I looked over and I had a good buddy that I used to play baseball with, because I grew up playing like select baseball and had a lot of friends that I was really good at baseball. Baseball was a huge part of my life. I shared that earlier. Me and Brad played on a younger team, and I look over and Brad's head is like hanging, and like all of this is like just like a sheet of blood, like all of it. Like, it looked like something out of like an Exorcist movie or something like that. His whole face was covered in blood. And I was like, I didn't know I was so messed up. They pulled me out of the car eventually, the police. But I remember looking over at Brad, and he was unconscious. I didn't know if I killed Brad. I didn't have any answers on that. I'm in jail. I'm pacing. I'm drunk. I come to, and I don't have enough money to get myself out. Just the feeling of like, I am in deeper than I ever signed up for. And I didn't want to cause this harm. I didn't want this to be like, I can't believe this. So I explained all that to say that was my first DWI. And my homelessness was probably directly related with legal consequences and getting in trouble. And that was the first one towards the culmination of all the different trying, experimenting, all the different things I did, to where I had actually gotten into something that I couldn't get out of. And I called home and I was ashamed, and called my mom, called my pops. And my mom's car's totaled, or my grandma's car's totaled. And I walk out of the jail, and I remember, man, I just couldn't say, I couldn't look at anyone. Like I was just so shameful. And that picture right there, it's important you guys understand that picture just being so shameful, I lived there till I was 25. And at this time I was probably 20, 21. I lived in that place where I was just shameful. I felt like I let everyone down. I hadn't realized my potential, and it made for more drinking. It made for more use. I got my DWI. I was out there, and I couldn't even look at them. And so they're like, well, you're not going back to school. And I think a large part of my homelessness or getting to homelessness was dishonesty. And, you were talking about that, and I had a lot of thoughts while you were sharing about the homeless. But I want to say too is like the person that I was most dishonest with was myself. I refused to take any accountability for the things that I'd done or what had happened. I always was in the habit of explaining away things. Well, you don't understand if then I would, and so I had that DWI, and then I couldn't go back to school, so I was living at home, and I was absolutely miserable because I felt like I had missed the boat. It was all out there, I had missed school, and I was doing everything to get back to school, so I'm at home and I'm lying about being sober, and like I'm working a landscaping job, and I absolutely hate my landscaping job, and I'm supposed to be going to community college. I was lying about that. I wasn't going to community college. I was just because my family at this time was like, you just wrecked the vehicle. We think you have a problem. I'm like, no, I don't. So I am holding on by pins and needles, trying to make it appear as if this was an event that accidentally happened, or I just got in a car accident. And I'm living at home. I'm using. They're pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that like I'm doing a decent job of hiding it, but in hindsight, I think they knew, but they just wanted me to go back to school. And I end up going back to school, and I even remember before pulling out of the driveway, I was working at. I think I ended up working at Costco. By the end of it, I was working at Costco. I had some bottles of like champagne like stashed under my truck and stuff like that. My dad's helping me pack up my car. I'm like, I got it. I got everything. And he's like, no, I'm going to help you pack up your truck or whatever. And, you can be delusional. When you want to be delusional, you can be delusional. Like he's packing up the car, and I'm like, I hope he doesn't. Please don't let him see it. Please don't let him see it. Please don't. Because that was the whole reason I came home. It was because I was drinking and partying and got in a car accident. And I'm literally going back off to school, and there's champagne bottles chinging up under my back seat. Ching, like they hit.
Yeah, yeah.
He's helping me pack it, and I'm hoping that I didn't hear those ching while he was packing my back. I was like, it's fine. You just get out of the driveway. You'll be fine. These are the ways that I would talk myself through these events. It's like, you just got to get out. You just got to get back to school. It's going to be good. And before I pulled out of the driveway, he's like, hey, man, like, be careful. Take care of yourself. And like, something to the effect of like, be careful with those champagne bottles that are under your seat back there. And I said, fuck, man. Like I let him down, and I let myself down, that I didn't learn anything. I wasn't ready. I was completely dishonest. I was not willing to look at who I was or what I was doing at that point in life. And that thought process is what took me to homelessness. I'm going to give you guys, the story specifically, but I want you guys to understand the fact that I was unwilling to be vulnerable about what was going on inside of me, who I was, the different inadequacies that I was feeling, all these different things that I can share with you now. All of that led to me continuing to drink and trying to find different ways to circumvent. So I went back to school, and this time, it ended up being a bigger disaster than ever. And shame, more than anything, is what drove me to homelessness. I went back to school, didn't go to any of my classes. I couldn't go back home. I was on probation for a DWI. I was shame-filled, and I said, I'll just run. I'll run from all responsibility. I don't want to trek in for probation anymore. I had this breathalyzer in my car, and I would keep my car parked, and I would take Xanax and drink and like not blow into it, so I didn't, But I had a probation officer, and I remember once again being so fearful. And like today, I don't have any fear around any interactions with anyone, but I'd be so fearful when my probation officer would call, or when I would have to report for probation, because like I knew that I was doing wrong. And like that feeling is another thing too, man, is like there is a great sense of freedom when you've taken care of your bills, you studied for your tests, you're working on your body. I've taken care of my stuff. You know what I mean? That freedom is a superpower because it allows you to like navigate life unencumbered. You know, to where you got all this baggage, like, oh my God, is it all gonna fall apart today? And because I was unwilling to be honest, I couldn't get any relief. And because I wouldn't get relief, I'd continue to use. And I went off to school, and I didn't do school. I lied about my grades, and I just knew I couldn't go back home, and I had probation. So what I did was I just said I was gonna just hey man, I'm just gonna freaking disappear and not answer my phone. Like my plan was like just to turn off my phone. And I had a buddy who lived in Lubbock, and rest in peace, Tim Akapasan. He died from like a drug overdose, drug deal. We really don't know what happened. R.I.P. Tim. Man, I went and lived with Tim, and like out of the kindness of his heart, he let me, live on his couch and stuff. And like, I was on probation, and I was fearful about my legal status. Like, if they had a warrant out for my arrest, because I turned my phone off because I didn't want to deal with reality. Talk about delusion and some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. I wasn't willing to live in reality, so I would only live in the version of life that I was willing to accept, which was delusional. So I just said I would turn my phone off, even though I had a probation officer I was supposed to report to. So the mental place that I was in is they already have a warrant out for you. As long as they don't know where you are, then you can have fun till the cows come home, and then when it's over, it's over. And like, man, F it. I'll put together a good run. And I think a lot of homelessness, a lot of pain that we live in is running away from our responsibilities. Come back to the full circle back to responsibility, running away from our responsibilities, and not embracing it. And like that's a mental prison, man. It's like I was living in that one day the boys in blue are gonna ride down on me, and all the stuff we were talking about, having opportunities that we were talking about earlier, all of that stuff was for naught, and I was gonna be a wasted effort. And just super shameful that I dropped out of college, and my parents would talk to me about how important college was and all that. So I'm living with Tim in Lubbock, Texas, and it's like the Dust Bowl. And the only thing to do, shout out to all my Red Raiders, the only thing to do in Lubbock, Texas is to party. They had this place called like Conference. If you're from Lubbock or ever lived or went to Tech, they have Conference, which is like a bar, and then they had Soho. And then they had like the different apartments, which had pools and stuff. And like, man, I remember like giving blood, and you get like $75 like uploaded onto like a freaking like gift card, debit card type of situation. And I would go to Walmart and buy a big ass jug of this is like approaching like just like my bottom. It's like I'd buy like a big ass jug of this, like there was this beautiful Hispanic woman on this glass jug, like moonshine type of like wine jug that's like $10, and it's like yay big, like it's a whole like moonshine jug with her dancing on the front. And I would go give blood to go get that, and then if as long as I could go to the party and have like a tumbler full of wine and a buzz going and maybe a shot at some chicks, then what I was doing was worth it, and I would live in that delusion. And I want to kind of make a bridge here. A lot of homelessness is a deal to where like the person is unwilling to take accountability or talk about like what's really going on with them. Or like if they have mental health, you got to take your medication, man. Like you can't, working in behavioral health, the best way that I've heard it put is accepting life on life's terms. Like right now, man, like a lot of you guys like 24, like what you said, like if you're not, on Hinge, Bumble, all the different dating apps, if you're not 6 foot, you're just not 6 foot. But the delusion that we live in is like you'll post that I'm 6 foot, and then you meet the person and you're really 5'5", and it's like it's that much worse that you lied, as opposed to being like, yeah, bro, like this is who I am, this is what I'm about. But that deal to where we're not willing to live in reality, live life on life's terms, is what inevitably drove me to homelessness. So I lived in Lubbock. I'm not paying rent. I'm mooshing off of Tim. And out of the kindness of his heart, he's let me stay there with him. And then, man, I was taking a whole bunch of Xanax, a whole bunch of Adderall, drinking all of these. I mean, and just the stress of having a warrant and like not being malnourished. Like I'm waiting on a buddy of ours who works at a pizza. restaurant to like bring home pizza every day. Like hopefully he brings home pizza. Other than that, I'm just gonna drink wine. And like this is where like I'm a young dude, like 21, 22, and like my kidneys hurt. Like I think it's my back hurting, but it's actually my kidney. Like your kidney's located like back here. And I thought it was just like, man, I'm having like I can't get comfortable. And it's like my kidneys are freaking feeling it, dude. Like I'm just drinking wine. I'm going and giving blood, and then like I'm not in the highest, health at that time. I'm literally just drinking wine and eating pizza and going and giving blood. So like my body's not doing okay right now. So I did that, and man, I remember I had like a nervous breakdown, dude. I went into psychosis. I haven't shared this with a whole bunch of people, but I went into like psychosis. I was convinced that between Tim and like a couple other people that they were like trying to take me out. And like now that I work in treatment, I'll do screenings and like guys will call in and like it's like, hey, what's going on, dude? And it's like my phone's tapped. I'll be like, right on, brother. You know what I mean? Like I've been there before. You know what I mean? Like you haven't slept in months. You haven't gotten a good night's sleep. Like everything's been sporadic. You're drinking, using drugs. Just a litany of different things that culminate in psychosis, and I ended up being in psychosis. And my what I thought was true, like what was like actually true to me, was that this was a setup, and I knew too much because some of my friends sold weed or whatever, other chemicals. Because I knew too much, they were planning to take me out. And man, I remember going and like knocking on another friend of ours' apartment who was a girl, and like I'm like knocking on the door frantically, and like she didn't answer the door, and like I'm wigging out and like had a full meltdown, like a full episode, dude. And like the cops were called, and they showed up, and like I remember just like the lights pulling up, and like I'm like, thank God, like these people are trying to kill me, and just like having a whole episode. Like I was happy to see the police, and I thought I had a warrant. And like, man, I hate to say it, but there's been times in my life where I've gotten arrested, and like anyone who's been arrested, like if you've been on the run or if you've been delusional or just running away from it, even in those moments to where you surrender and you go to jail, there is a moment of peace to where it's like, I'm not running anymore, thank God. Even in those moments, it's really powerful. And like even here, sitting here talking with you about it, like I can see that. But like, man, there would be times where I was just going on edge and have all this stuff going and have warrants and I'm psychosis, like what I was just describing. And like, man, I finally get arrested, whatever happens, and I'm like, it's over, thank God. I can move forward now. I think the majority of the pain that we experience comes from the prison that is the anticipation of that impending sense of doom. Like if you'll turn and fight and handle what you need to handle and take it on, you might not show up the way that you wanted to, but at least you turned and you fought, as opposed to running. Because like, man, I ran for years, and like in that space, like if you've ever considered like dark thoughts or had like suicidal ideation or all that type of stuff, like I qualify. It's been from running, man. You're just tired of running. Like I can't run anymore. I don't know where to turn. I can't imagine a better version of life. It's going to hurt. Like there's no way I can come back from this. And like, I guess this part of the podcast can maybe help answer the question that you asked earlier. But man, like, I just want to let you guys know that like, man, I, and as my own person who put myself in this stuff, I am so thankful that I didn't end it all or just gave up completely to see this day. I mean, before I came over here, I ran Town Lake, went shopping. Life is incredible, man. And it's like, I never thought I would have saw the day. That's just like kind of a tidbit about like just my mind space and like where I was at during that time. But I got arrested. I told him I have a warrant. Please just take me in, whatever. And I remember just going to jail and sitting in jail for a while, man. And my parents refused to bond me out. And man, I detoxed in jail, and I didn't even realize I was detoxing. I had been completely delusional around being addicted to substances. Like I thought I liked to party. But when I got to jail, man, I got there and I was in psychosis, and they put you, I love to call it this. I call it the butt naked room.
The B&R.
A trip to the butt naked room, man. AKA the padded cells. Like if you're tripping, if you're on psychosis, like if you're like wigging out and stuff, they take all your stuff and they give you that warrior suit is what we call it. Like jail lingo, like joking, we call it that warrior suit, which is like Velcro. It looks like a freaking samurai suit. Like it's a long skirt. It's like a tank top type of situation. You strap it across here and there's no like strings on it. You have like rubber shoes and like you're in a padded cell and like they open up the chute. You have no, like there's a door over here. So like there's a slot and you have no idea of like what day it is, what time it is, what's going on. You just hear the knock. You come up and like the highlight of your day are the meals. Like your day is marked by the different meals. I remember detoxing in SEG is what it's actually called. It's called SEG, but you know, some people call it the butt naked room. Detoxing in the butt naked room in my warrior suit, like sleeping on my hands and just like, dude, how did we get here in life? Like I used to play like top tier level baseball. Like I should have did JUCO. Like all those thoughts are happening. And like, I'm sleeping on my shoes and like you sleep on your shoes because the shoes are rubber and it like, you don't have a pillow. It's like either like, it's like a hard slab of concrete. They're trying to make the room like either soft or like in a way to where like there is nothing that you can use to end yourself. So it's like everything, like even like the toilet is just like a hole in the ground. Like they don't want you to like hit your head on that. There've been guys that have done that. Like I've seen all types of stuff in jail. It's just like crazy horror stories. But like in those rooms, the objective is to make sure that you can't hurt yourself. So like there's this bright light that's in there, just like here, like really good lighting, but it's like, you don't know what time of day it is. You don't know just what's going on. You're just in psychosis. And like I had wigged out in the holding cell. So they're like, hey, we're taking you to the butt naked room. I'm in there. I was probably in there maybe like 4 or 5 days, dude. I had no idea what was going on. But, you know, you would get this brown tray and it would have like 2 like vanilla cookies, you know, a gloop of whatever, and then like some broccoli. And like you'd eat that. And like that was your day. And then meds came and like I'm detoxing off of several drugs and like I would take my pill and then I remember just passing out, conking out, like thank God. And I was like literally such a fiend to have whatever type of detox medication that was because I could finally pass out and look to the next thing. I was detoxing, man. And like I was so delusional and so off base from what was actually the reality, which is that I was a drug addict and had failed out of school and didn't have a job and was living on buddies' couches. And it's like, oh my God, like this is my real, this is what it is. In my mind, and this is something I'll say too, even in sober living, I think something that doesn't get discussed, like within the homeless population, is like, for me to receive the help that I need, I can't be so entitled. Help is going to come the way that it comes. I don't get to dictate how help comes. I feel like that's a problem that I see with a lot of guys who are like, help me, whatever like that. And it's like, but I don't want to be made, you know, my favorite one that I've heard like in the rooms of AA is like, you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. Either you can save your ass and lose face, you know, or vice versa. But like, that's it. Like guys are trying to like still be cool, but like you're like living in sober living, and I've been there before too. It's like, bro, stop all that. You know what I mean? Like, man, you're here where you're at. Like, do better. So I was in jail. I was in the butt naked room, and anyways, man, I get out of there, and I'm like, all right, well, what's next? And I don't know what to do. So I get out of there, and I end up going to, where'd I go after that? I went back to Dallas. I moved in with my mom. And shout out to Mom, but that was enabling. She shouldn't have let me come back home. And seriously, man, shout out to the mamas. If there's any mamas watching this, don't let him move back home. It's enabling. It's not a good deal. You're not equipped to help him. There's nothing you can do for him at home. And I went home and manipulated my mom and continued to use and like still, and like violated probation and kept using and found myself in jail again, just like on a POCS, like possession of controlled substance. I remember I was like, I had bought Xanax again and like every time I buy Xanax or like start partying again, the periods of like destruction are getting closer. Like I go to jail, maybe after a couple months, 6 months. It takes me 6 months to burn it down. Now it's maybe 3 months. Now it's maybe, whatever. And I remember I went through sober living. I lived at home with my mom, ended up going back to sober living. I'm doing the community college thing again. I'm starting to get my life. And dude, I'm like, I'm not really happy about the sobriety thing. I feel like I'm missing out still. So like, it's not enough to get sober. It has to be a deal to where like, I believe that like, this is the best version of me. I feel like people throw around, gotta get sober, gotta get sober, gotta get sober. Like sober is just the operating word. Like I want to get sober so bad. Like, no, you are desperate to become the person that you are meant to become. That's what you're desperate for. And that's way bigger than being sober. Like that's a part of who I am. The person I am today runs half marathons, cycles, personal trainer, all that. Like that's who I am. I've been doing that since I was a little kid, man. I've always helped the homies. Like, hey, man, let me show you this. Like, coaching is something that I can't get out of. I love it. I can't stop. Like, I love to see people do that. But like, sobriety is just a piece of that. And I would encourage people to pursue like your purpose and like who you are. And like, if sobriety is part of that, do what you need to do. But like, hopefully, like you find what your purpose is and like what's important to you. So I had moved back home, ended up in jail several times. Last time I was in jail, man, I was like, man, I need to get out of here and do something different. So I said, man, you know what? I'm going to move to Austin. And I remember I ended up moving to Austin. And even on that time when I moved to Austin, I was in sober living, and I had ended up sneaking and geeking, as they call it. Sneaking and geeking. It's like, man, I was living in sober living, and my family wanted me there. And man, they have certain parameters and rules that they have with the sober living that you got to do. You got to have a sponsor. You got to work the steps. You got to go get a job. And like, people who are not familiar with the term sober living, it's like a little bit different from a halfway house, but essentially guys are rebuilding their lives, same type of situation. And I was living there. And man, I got a job, and because I wasn't okay with where I was in life or who I was, I still remember at sober living going and sneaking drinking on like a Sunday. This was back during when Germany won the World Cup in FIFA. I used to love FIFA. Germany won the World Cup. I was here in Austin, and I would go and watch the soccer games on Sundays and just like pound mimosas at Maudie's. You ever heard Maudie's? Maudie's is like a little Tex-Mex restaurant, and they had like bottomless mimosas, and I would freaking go and pound those, and then I was trying to walk back to sober living to walk it off, but just living this double life, lying. Once again, I couldn't accept life on life's terms, and eventually, like, man, I get found out, and I tell guys at sober living this all the time. When in sober living, they're really strict because they have really good boundaries. They understand, and they've seen a lot of people do all types of crazy stuff. But when you are told, like, hey, you didn't come home last night, you have 15 minutes to pack your stuff and hit the streets, that's when it becomes clear to you. You're like, man, I'm struggling. Like, I have a problem. Like, why am I putting myself in this situation? And I remember having all my stuff in both hands. Like, I got some trash bags and like maybe a suitcase, and I'm dragging all my stuff to the bus stop, and I'm about to get on the bus, but I don't know where I'm going. And like that moment right there, if you were to take a picture like of my life, it's like, man, to be in Austin and not know where you're going, get on the bus, and like to be sitting at that bus stop just scrolling your phone, and you've burned a whole bunch of relationships. You've burned relationships with family. I told you about Tim. I've stayed with him. I've done that with more than a handful of people. We just don't have the time to go through all the different situations like that. But, I bounced around from different couches and all this, and I've used up all my relationships, all my friends. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to go. And they had this I think it's called NA24 Club or whatever like that. It's like in North Austin. And I stayed there a couple days until I could get into another sober living. And then in that sober living, a buddy of mine had told me about like a party or like a hangout, and I rolled the dice again. I spent it all. I was trying to get it all in one whop. You know, there were supposed to be girls there, and I was, even though I had been through all that stuff, that incessant obsession that I can extract out of life everything in one time was still present. And he was like, man, there's a party and there's going to be chicks and all that. And it was sick, and we went to 6th Street. But once again, I found myself packing my stuff from sober living and walking my ass to the bus station and not knowing where I was going to go. And like, man, without getting into like all the different weeds and all, I want you guys to know that like, man, that had to happen to me several times in life. And I also want to say this. If you guys, and some people, I don't like this terminology, people get into rock bottom. Rock bottom is not a destination. You really just need to discard the shovel. Like, just stop digging. When you notice that life is not going the way, or you're feeling mental health problems or just different things, you don't have to seek out this rock bottom. And this is like part of the stuff that I talk to families. You know, you said at the beginning, I work for the Last Resort here in Smithville, just outside of Austin. When the families call in and they ask me like, hey, what do? We don't know how to approach this. What's next? What I'll say is, I say, hey, listen, you know, these are best practices. This is how we can have these conversations. But every now and again, I'll get a family that calls in and they're like, well, he just needs to hit his rock bottom. And I'm like, no. He needs you to come and say, this is reality. This is what it is. We love you still. This is still here. You don't have to lose everything. But stop. We love you. This is the reality. Accept help. Please go and take care of yourself. And for some of y'all, I hope that's a plug for some of y'all too. If you have a friend that you know that's struggling and stuff like that, he's not going to just figure it out, bro. Get with some buddies and go and lean on your brothers and take care of them and say, hey, man, dude, we love you and like, we care about you, but like, we feel like something's off. Like, are you good? Like, what? Like, go and do that. And like, that's not just men specific, but women too, whatever. Go and do that for people. Quit waiting for people to like completely crash out or have an episode before we're willing to go and talk to them. The rock bottom is not necessary. If we can identify that this person has struggled, let's go approach them and like find better ways to help them. But like, that was me. And like, for guys too, I tell a lot of people, you know, when they call in and like now come full circle looking at, you know, the families that are asking me to try to help their loved one. How do we do it? Does he need to hit rock bottom? Maybe he just hasn't had enough pain. It's like, none of that's necessary, man. It's not necessary. There's resources available. Let's let him have an experience. And we hope all we can do is approach our loved ones, our friends, and present this stuff. And we hope that they're in a place to where they can hear us, that we can get through. That's what intervention does. It's the best. There's a lot of different interventions. I tell families that it can either be legal, it can be physical, it can be health. I've had several of them, man, that were like, you know, I was like pissing blood. And it's like, damn, like, dude, like, oh my God, this is terrible. You know what I mean? Or homelessness, or like those moments at the bus station. Like, those things can happen, but they're not necessary, David. Like, we can just like have a conversation and come and say, we love you. We know something's wrong, bro. Like, let us help you. Yeah. I talked about a lot. And I just want to give you a moment to kind of like comment too, because I just kind of walking you through how we got to homelessness, what some of it looked like. But man, there's so much that goes with it. But I just want you guys to understand that there were several times where for days at a time, I just was kind of like, you know, at the homeless shelter, dude, just because I would jeopardize everything because I just didn't want what they were offering. I don't want life like this. Yeah. I want to be able to do coke. I want to party. I've seen Wolf of Wall Street. That stuff looks badass. I've watched Mad Men. I watch Mad Men all the time. The AMC series, and they're like guys who constantly have a glass of scotch and, you know, they're smoking cigarettes and coming up with great ideas. And like, I wanted that to be me so bad, but that's just not my lot in life, and that's okay. But to get to the place where I can say that, man, it took a long time. But I'm sure you have some feedback, man. I just wanted you guys to kind of just hear some different anecdotes, like kind of what happened.
Yeah. What do you think was so you're 29 now, almost 30. So you've been sober about 4 years?
4 going on 5. August is it September 28th of 25? I'll have 5 years.
Congratulations.
Thanks, brother.
What was the what was the thing? What was the it factor that caused it to stick for you this time?
So I had my third DWI. I was on probation already, and I thought I was going to prison. You know, their first offer was like 7 years, and this actually happened during COVID. You know, we just didn't have. I mean, I can't go through all the different stories, man. But during COVID, I had moved over to sober living. I was living with a chick, and she had no idea. And like, guys, if you're dating a girl and you've struggled with substance abuse, you have to be completely transparent, man, because I believe like spirituality, the things around us, the universe, whatever you want to call it, use the tools at hand. Like you need to be honest with the people around you so that they can hopefully have genuine relationships that allow you to be your best version. I wasn't that with her. I never told her that I struggled with substance abuse or anything like that. I was just like drinking and like partying and like, she's like, you know, and like I was like, yeah, let's party. And like, you know, I'm doing some other stuff in the bathroom while she's drinking whatever over here. And like, I'm ping pong and doing my thing. And like, that's going on for months. And like, I'm like disappearing, like coming home late and like all the things like just like something's up. Like he's kind of off. You know what I mean? He's a weird dude. He's a weird dude. But and like that's not right, man. Like I was like, dude, it was so wrong. I was living in Austin. I was living in South Austin, and I was being a weird dude for sure. I was, but I also hated my life, man. Let me tell you guys this too. I hope that this inspires someone. Man, because I was on probation and I had messed up legally, I went and started working for the city of Austin because they've been known to be, you know, forgiving with backgrounds. And like, I also was still in shame and was afraid of getting rejected. So I just went and got a job with the city of Austin. And I haven't shared this with too many people, but I worked in recycle, which is picking up the trash. I was a trash man during COVID. Man, it was horrendous, man. I was like out there, the streets, everything was shut down. There's trash everywhere. People are living at home, so there's an influx of trash. Like think about like if you lived at home and everybody else around you lived at home. Like a lot of us work remotely now, but like everybody's living at home at that time, producing copious amounts of trash, just crazy amounts of trash. I'm on recycle, but still there's a lot of recycle that goes with it, and it's disgusting, man. I mean, we're getting some hazard pay, maybe a couple $100 a check, but I was working as a fucking garbage man, picking up trash, and it was the middle of August, and it's hot as shit out there, and like, man, it's some of the most brutal work that I've ever done in my life. I told you about working on a ranch. Dealing with cows and feeding cows is hard work. Working on the back of a truck, you want to talk about dangerous too, people like are speeding by, they just don't give a fuck. Like, dude, I hated my life. There was one point in my life that I absolutely hated my life and was like using a crazy amount was before I got those last 2 DWIs, and I got them in quick succession. I told you everything was coming together a lot faster. Like I got 1 DWI, and then within like 3 months later, I got another DWI, which ended up actually being a blessing. I'll talk about that, but I mean, I got 2 DWIs in quick succession. I was like, while I was dating this chick, and she was like, what the heck, babe? Like, I didn't know. And like, that's why it's so weird, because now that I work at admissions, I'm talking to the girlfriend who was dating me.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, listen, it's not going to get better. You got to get him to treatment so he can get right. He's not going to self-correct regardless of what he's saying to you. Trust me. It's like, it's kind of like I have a buddy of mine, and like a lot of my friends, we have like dark sense of humor just because we've like been through a lot and like seen some messed up stuff. And like, it's like, you know, like there's this like metaphorical wizard that's like, hey, bro, like, don't go down the freaking thing, dude. And like, you know, it's like, yes, more, another, please. Like, that's me. Like, I'm like, yes, more pain, you know. And same thing with the families is like, you know, they'll call and like be like, well, he says, and I'm like, you don't understand it. He's already lost. He's not in a place. He's out of control. He can't help himself. And that's where I was. I was in a place to where like I'm telling her whatever, and you know, whatever with our relationship. But as far as controlling my drinking, my use, and having things under control, I was not. I was completely out of control. I was using a large part of my paycheck to go and get drugs, cocaine, Adderall, Xanax, marijuana, and at the end of it, I told you guys I was at parties and stuff at the beginning, 15. The end of drug addiction, substance abuse looks like a lot of isolation and just using by yourself and a lot of and a lot of fear. I remember like man, I would get cocaine or smoke or drink, and I would go and get it, and I would speed all the way home because I knew it was illegal and it was terrible, and I was on probation and just all these different things, so much anxiety. Do all that, get through the door. Oh my God, I made it home. And then just as much of using, enjoying the use, was the ritual of doing all the things. You text a guy, you meet the guy over here, you give him the money, you get just the right amount of beer, you do a little bit of cocaine, you smoke on the porch, you pace, you come back in, you do this, and like these different things. And eventually, I've shared this at meetings, I hated myself. I hated my job. I hated the amount of drugs that I did. I hated that I had shamed my family. And man, there'd be times like I can remember just as good. I'm in my vehicle and I'm sitting there and I look up in the rearview mirror and like you never say this stuff out loud. You know, in the movies it's like real animated and stuff so you can hear the person's thoughts. But in my head, dude, I was like, man, I hate you. I hate that you do this. I hate that you do this. Why do you do this? And then I take a deep breath and start the car and go do what I do. I hated that I had to go do it at that moment, but like to keep going, I had to do it. And I hated that I had to do it. I hated my job. I hated the amounts that I used. I hate that I didn't have a relationship with my family anymore because I lied to him so much. I hated that with my girlfriend, I lied to her and she didn't know who I was truly. I hated that I couldn't get out from under. I'd make money, but I use it all on drugs and alcohol. And, you know, I mean, as like a gift was that, man, I had gotten 2 DWIs in quick succession. And, man, I knew that things weren't good, man. And, you know, my girlfriend had reached out to my mom, and man, those moments that we were talking about earlier, those moments where you leap on faith. I was approached with one of those moments, man. I get out of jail, and it was my 3rd DWI. I get back home to my apartment. My mom's like, hey, we're coming up there. I don't know. I'm coming up there. I just need to make sure you're okay or whatever. And like, I'm trying to just keep soldiering on. And I had kept a phone number of a buddy of mine. And I called him. And his name is John Waters, R.I.P. John Waters. John Waters passed away too, another guy that was in recovery. I said, John, I need to go to treatment. And luckily I was still on my parents' insurance. You know, a lot of guys don't know this. When you're below the age of 26, I think it's 26, you can remain on your parents' insurance. After that point, that's pretty much the cutoff. And like guys find themselves in a whole nother shitstorm. It's like, I'm broke and I do drugs and I don't have insurance. Which means now you're about to start doing state-funded treatment, which is not what you want. It's essentially government-subsidized treatment. The treatment's not competitive, right? Like it's not private, you know. So it's just the top quality clinicians are just not going to work at a state-funded treatment. It's just how it is, man. Yeah. So the kind of help that you can get changes after 26. So I was 25, and I still was on my pop's insurance, and man, they were like, hey, you know, what's your insurance and all that? And they're like, all right, your out of pocket is like a couple grand or whatever like that. And in my mind, just to kind of show you guys how delusional I was, in my mind, the thing that was going to fix everything was I was saving up for a truck. Something material. And I share that with you guys because I thought there might be some of you out there that believe that too. It's like, man, I thought it was something material that I could purchase that would fix all the things that I just told over the last 2 hours that I've explained to you. I thought there's something here, or some people put it on a relationship. If I can get that girl back, then that's going to fix all. And like, brother, that's not going to fix all that. That's not going to get all of that. You're going to have to go on the journey that is life to find out who you are, what your purpose is, and find your confidence in something outside of the material world. It's going to have to be spiritual. It's going to have to be based in internal. It can't be anything that's tangible. It won't suffice. And going on that journey, started when I took the money that I had saved for a truck and paid to go to treatment. That was it. You talked about the moment. I swapped in the material for something that was going to be, long term, wasn't instant gratification, and like it's not something that like would immediately be like a cool purchase, like an Xbox or something like that. Like it's not one of those things. That was the first time where I was willing to be like, hey, this is all I got, and this is like my plan, my escape route, and I'm putting it all in on me. Not on something material, not on these other frivolous things. I'm going to go to treatment because I know John got right. He got sober, and look at him. Like now he's got a family and he's a good dude, and I love John, and John's like me, and I know I can get right. If he can do it, I can do it. And I hope that resonates with some of y'all. That's why I'm sitting in this chair right now. I went over there and went to treatment at Brazos Recovery Services. I'll definitely give them a shout out because that's where I got sober. I went and worked at Brazos, and I not worked there yet, but I went through treatment for 50 days, and they recommended that I move to Kerrville, Texas. And once again, all the conditioning that I had from my youth and West Texas, and what I had heard was blocking me from going to have a new experience. They were like, hey, do you want to go to Kerrville? And I was like, no, I don't think they have a lot of black people out there. And I was like, I don't know about Kerrville. Let me get back to you. And they're like, well, dude, like you got like $700 to your name. They have some sober livings to where like you can get in for $650. So you might consider Kerrville. And I showed up out there, man, and started working my ass off. I went and worked on a ranch. I was cutting down cedar. And I need to share this with y'all because in those moments I was cutting down cedar and working my ass off on a ranch. And the program of AA talks about connecting to the universe. Some people call it Buddha. Some people call it Jesus. Some people call it, just the underlying fabric that ties us all together. I'm really not interested in what you call it, but the thing that connects all of us. Some people, the stars, whatever the get down is. I'm not here to endorse a religion or anything like that. I'm just saying the thing that ties us all together from person to person, the human connection, whatever you want to call it. I couldn't understand how that thing, like the plan for my life, was for me to be cutting trees in Kerrville, Texas. Like if y'all say like spirituality is so powerful and like that's supposed to like be the thing that like gets me right, and how is cutting trees in Kerrville, Texas for $12 an hour going to help me with my legal bills that I have? I have pending legal cases. I have this yearning inside of me to like coach and like do big business and like be a part of an organization and like help a lot of people. Like that's in me, and I just don't understand how I'm here doing this, and like that stuff's like what's pulling at me, eating at me on the inside. And I just couldn't see it. But at that time, what I needed was a consistent job. I needed to be faithful and be consistent at a job and show up sober and remain sober and do that. And I did that for 6 months, and I saved my money, and I started paying down my lawyer fees. And I didn't know if my legal situation was up yet. And by the way, while I was at Brazos on my third DWI, when I got out of jail, the condition is that I got an ankle monitor. So I remember being at Brazos, and I've always been a sports guy, but I'm running around campus with this freaking ankle monitor clacking on my ankle, dude. I had like a blister from it. It's crazy, but I'm like, I'm running around campus. Then I moved to Kerrville. I have this ankle monitor. I remember going to AA meetings and like all the stuff that I held dear, being cool or trying to like look cool. You can't look cool with an ankle monitor, right? You can't look cool with the ankle. So all the things that I had leaned on before, drugs, looking cool, clothes, money, all the things that I would use to kind of build up my personality, or just all of that was gone, wrecked. And I had like $50 left over to buy some ramen. And my first paycheck I used to get boots to go do more work. And then I started paying my legal fees and things like this. And 6 months later, I'd saved up some money. And then a year later, my ankle monitor was off. But also, too, the blessing of the ankle monitor was when I went to sober living, and I had been to sober living more than a handful of times, been kicked out more than a handful of times, it's game over. The ankle monitor says you can be at sober living, at work, or the grocery store. It's a GO one. So like I was forced to like go and do the work that I was unwilling to do. Like just grind, bro. Yeah. For the first time in my life, like, hey, bro, as opposed to like being Mr. Cool and like trying to get chicks or trying to like look a certain way, like you only get to just be a grinder. Like you just get to grind, bro. That's it. You can go to work, you can go to grocery store, and you can do AA, bro. And like either you're going to do that with this ankle monitor and you're going to fall within the parameters that are acceptable, or you're going to step out of that on one of your wild shenanigan missions and find yourself down the road for like 10 years, bro. That's what's at stake right now. Thank God, man, that I had an ankle monitor, that all those things happened. Thank God. That was the only time I was willing to accept it on life's terms. I was always dictating what I needed for me. And the truth is I didn't know. I didn't know, and I went, and thank God for that ankle monitor, and it showed me how to be faithful with the job and show up. And man, I worked that job, and next thing I know, I was living at a sober living, and they said, how do you feel about being the house manager? And I thought this was a great responsibility, and I was like, yeah, man. He's like, and the guy I work for, his name's Cody. He's pretty famous in Kerrville, but he's also famous for being a stickler. Like he's pretty tight on his money, bro. Like the baseline table is like, if you house manage, you don't pay any rent. You're just like, hey, you don't pay rent, and you get to save that money from your job you're working, and you drug test the other guys, and you've been sober for a year, and okay, you're responsible. So Cody was like, we'll give him a probationary period to where we take off $100 off his rent or $200. I was like, this is some bullshit, And I was like, oh, powerful universe, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, give me the deal. And anyways, eventually I got, no rent. And then I had been house managing there for a while and working on the ranch and saving my money, which allowed me, so I didn't have to pay rent, which allowed me to pay my lawyer fees. I owed like $5,000 in lawyer fees. I'm making $12 an hour while, trying to pay for like food for myself and like do all and all the different things. I just can't see, like, my faith is so small, and like my understanding, like I can't see how this stuff is going to add up to a fulfilling life. I just can't see it at this point. And I want to point that out for some of you guys who are in school. Maybe you're working a shitty job. Maybe you're doing whatever you're doing in life, and you can't see how that's going to affect change in your dream. Dude, it's part of it. Like, those moments are the things that instill the values and the type of guy that you're going to be. You got to show up to work. You got to be willing to push hard, even when you're not getting the recognition that you think you should be getting. Like, all of that has to happen before you have those opportunities. Like, that process is kind of like, and like when I talk to like sponsees or guys in AA, it's kind of like, like I'm a huge movie dude, love movies. It's kind of like the samurai. Like, dude has to, like, there's, the rejection where he gets sent off, he goes off to some village and does his training, and then there's a testing of faith, and then eventually he returns back and he's the hero, and he has the juice now. He has what he needs. Yeah. I feel like I'm kind of in the latter part of that, man. Like, I have the juice now. I know that I have it, but it took a long time to understand it. And anyways, I'm living in Kerrville. I'm managing. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I get called by Brazos to like, hey, do you want to come and help rebuild our alumni program? We've just had some terrible events. And there were some terrible events. Some of their staff, including John, had relapsed. And it's kind of hush-hush, but I think, it is what it is. I'll speak freely about it here. It's like, man, he had relapsed, and it put a bad name on the company, and they had new management, and they needed someone to help rebrand the company. And thank you Joe Roller and Zach Pogue. Joe was a CEO, Zach Pogue was a COO at that time, and they gave me my start in the treatment industry as an alumni coordinator, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And they said, well, man, you got a good personality, we're trying to rebuild some stuff here, we're just going to give you some space, like, it's yours, do what you do. And man, I remember I was making all these crazy videos and just anything I could do to get traction from the internet, from our alumni, to get them to interact. Like, hey, who's this quirky, weird dude making videos and posts? And I would make flyers and we would do paintballing. And before long, we started getting some momentum. And, um, and we grew that thing, man, to where like we had one of the most profitable years that Brazos had ever had, like meaning like we had helped more than they had ever had. They had ever had. We helped more people than they had ever helped. And like we did it efficiently, and we helped a lot. So all the different things happened, and without getting to treatment drama, that team no longer worked at Brazos and they left. And before they left, like maybe a year before, I ended up switching over to admissions, which is what I was describing earlier, where you talk with families and help them get their loved ones into treatment. And got to give another shout out to Richard Bradshaw, man. He taught me how to work with these families, how to follow up. I didn't understand the power of following up with people and taking on the responsibility that, like, hey, I have a solution. They're the ones who are in need. It's my responsibility to continue to follow up, because they're not in a place to show up like that, you know? And like also too, and that's with all other business, man, like if you have a product or like if you have a service and you're following up with someone, like, man, it took a lot of work on me, like internally, my headspace, to get past like, they're going to think I'm annoying. It's like, dude, you got to leave all that at the door and be willing to call and leave voicemails and text messages and approach it from like, hey, this is my role. My role is to show up like this and make sure that this is available if these families need a place to reach out to. That's my role. And whatever industry that is for you, like that's my business, is to reach out and make sure that when they're ready or they ready to make that move, they know exactly where to go. It's right there at the top of their inbox. Yeah. And he showed me how to do that. He gave me a skill set, showed me how to, because at first, man, I was full of it, dude. I'd call people and he'd say, have you called? How many people have you called? I said, I've been making calls. He said, how many people have you called? I was like, and I would lie. And anyways, they were patient enough with me to develop a skill set to where like now, man, at TLR this past year, I was our top admissions rep, man. I mean, those guys gave me an opportunity to hone and maintain a skill set that's allowed me to do some really cool stuff. I've gone on vacation, come full circle, man. From not knowing where I was going to go on the bus stop and like throwing trash in Austin during COVID, man, I've been able to go on trips, save more money than I've ever saved. I'm about to buy a second vehicle. I'm going to buy a house in these next couple years. I'm about to finish up my BBA in healthcare management. A dream, like, man, I mean, that right there is like makes me super emotional, because like, man, I didn't realize how I had given up, dude. Like I was just waiting for something better to happen, but I didn't know how to bring that to fruition. I was like, man, it's got to get better than this, and I know I got the stuff, but I just can't. I don't feel like I can bring it forward. I don't have it in me. I don't know how to bring it forward. I don't know how to do better. I want to do better, but I can't. And feeling like that for years at a time. And so today, man, like I share my story and like talk to guys, and like I want you to know, like I went back to school. Like I'm almost done with my BBA in healthcare management. I'm thinking about going to get my MBA. I'm like 95% sure I'm going to go get my MBA. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's like the stuff we were talking about earlier. I'm just going to take steps and like see what happens. Man, the best thing that you guys can have is a willingness to say, fuck it, run it. Let's just see what happens. Just run at it, bro. Like if you don't know if you want to be a bodybuilder, if you want to go get a degree, if you want to be whatever, run at it. Run at it hard, bro. Yeah. Just run at it and see what happens, But like not being willing to take any steps and like mulling it over in our heads, like, man, I'd say experience is like the best thing that can happen over anything. That's what happened with school. I remember at Brazos, it inspired me to go back to school. And I'll say this too, man, there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of people who start school and then they'll like write it off as like, man, it's a hoax and like I don't need school and all that. And it's like, yeah, that's cool and stuff. But for me, it's more about like, it's something I started and I want to see myself finish it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, man, like, and also too, I'll say that about with guys too, man, with our culture right now. I don't know what's going on, but like, man, there's something too, and it's cool to finish what you started.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's cool to finish what you started. Like, man, that's the most satisfying feeling. Like, I ran several half marathons. I'm getting ready for a triathlon. With bodybuilding, man, I don't like in sixth grade, seventh grade, I was a chubby kid. Remember my mom was single and she was like feeding me Eggos every morning, and she's like eat Eggos and like drink hot chocolate. And I was a chubby little kid, and man, I started playing football and I got ripped. And I was like, I came into myself. So that mechanism of like sports and lifting had been enough for a period of time. And then it ended up turning into drug use. And I'm kind of gone through all the different stuff. But even with that, man, like what I want to say to y'all is like, you can't just rely on that stuff to fulfill you. Like not personal training, but weight training, going out, girls, all that stuff is good stuff and it has its place. But I will tell you, like, what's going to be more fulfilling is going to be doing this journey of finding out who you are and having your self-confidence, which is like, that's me today, man, is like, I have a true sense of confidence because I know that I do the work. I'm willing to answer the phone. I'm willing to follow up. I'm willing to write emails. I'm willing to do whatever homework I need to. I'm willing to study for the test. I was doing some reading earlier today. Like, I'm about it, and I know that I'll do it. And I've seen myself show up several times, and that's where my confidence comes from. Is like, I can take bigger chunks of like just take bigger bites of stuff because I've seen myself show up. But if you haven't seen yourself show up, man, you're not going to have it's going to be a false confidence, if anything. And like, you have to like work like just, shitty situations to build your confidence and like what you're capable of. And then some people will call it arrogant. Some people are going to be like, that guy's rude or whatever like that. But it is an unapologetic confidence that I have because I know that I've done the work. That's what it comes from. That's what allows me, like when people ask me questions, when they call in and ask about our program, I can speak clearly. I don't stutter. I can tell them exactly what's going on, how it's going to play out, what it is, because I know that I've done the work to be able to do that. That's kind of just like I guess, state of the nation, like what's going on with me now. Like, I'm finishing up school. I'll graduate in July, start my MBA. I was weight training for a bodybuilding, a natty bodybuilding competition last year. I ended up not doing it because like I found out, and like here's for some of you guys too, like if you're thinking about competing, understand like that last month, that last 6 weeks, like it is unhealthy. You're going to get down to where like your skin's paper thin, you're malnourished, and that's how those guys look like they have a six pack from hell, because they're malnourished and their skin is paper thin. So like that was the trade-off. I wasn't willing to trade that off last year because like I was that close to finishing my bachelor's of business administration and healthcare management. But yeah, like that was the deal. I was going to compete like at the end of last year, and like it was like, dude, like to compete, and like I just didn't know this. I went on the journey of competing, and like when I got to like the prep section is what they call it, it's like, dude, I mean, my calories are so low. I'm like in the last like month, like last couple weeks, like you're not drinking that much water. Like you're trying to pretty much get all the water out of your system, and like it gets really, unhealthy around when you see the pictures of Arnold, when you see the magazine, you see C-Bum, all of that, those guys look like that for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then some of those guys, like, dude, like in some of the competitions, like they're cramping on stage because of what they put their body through up to that point. If they see you cramping, like not for like regard out of you, like they're like, get off stage, it's not a good look, but understand those guys are like malnourished when they're up on stage. To lose the amount of weight and to look the way that they look, you're not in a healthy space. And I didn't realize that. So I love training. This year I'm going to do a triathlon. I might do a bodybuilding competition. We'll see. It's always going to be natty. Speak on that for a second. For like with the natty piece, when I was 21, I ran a cycle of Sussiton, and I'm going to tell you, I mean, I know a lot of y'all are like curious, like, hey, like, what is it? How does it work? All that. Dude, I ran a cycle and I didn't do any research, which I think a lot of people ends up happening, but they won't admit. they did not do nearly enough research to understand what a cycle is, how it interacts with your body,
Yeah.
what the after effect, like what's the cost, like all like just like a bro was like, hey, we got some shit coming in. I was like, hell yeah. I'm gonna change the way I feel through steroids now, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and so he got that ordered in, and you know, next thing I know, I'm in sober living, shooting myself in the ass with steroids, dude. You know, I'm sober. I'm not doing any mind altering, but it is mind altering because it's supposed to change the way that I feel about myself. And like, once again, that was the beginning of another relapse. But man, I ran that stuff. I got big. My face got mooned out, big old rounded shoulders. And like the other thing of it too, like this is the like exactly what we were talking about earlier. I had no idea the intricacies of bodybuilding. I was not eating properly yet. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't drinking as much water. I didn't have any idea about macros. I didn't have any idea about, you know, just best practices for how to lift, recover, all that stuff. I just thought blasting plus lifting equals getting big. And it's like, dude, you don't realize like what all's at stake and like what's happening with your heart. And like I've known guys that have had heart attacks, like personally, not guys on the internet, but like guys that I've known personally that have blasted and like just overdid it and like have had heart attacks, bro. Like major heart surgery because they were blasting and like just taxing the heart. So like understand what's at stake and like what you're doing with that. But yeah, I ran a cycle and I felt like King Kong. I was super strong, all that. But it led to relapse. So for me, like, I'm glad I'm documenting this. Like, man, I'm internally, like, I've never, like, now that I'm in the place now, like, if I'm in a place to where, like, I'm running steroids, I'm not in a good mental place. And I'm sure some guys that are sober, like, can do that. But, like, for me, man, like, if I need to change the way that I look through chemical enhancement, given the past that I have with substance abuse and have relapsed on it before, it's not worth it, bro.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, you know, what I have gotten into and like some hacks for y'all is like, man, I've gotten into like when I was cutting last year, bro, I was doing like baked chicken and rice, grinding the baked chicken and rice. I would just take like 6 egg whites in the morning for breakfast, a scoop of protein, run that. At lunch, I'd do chicken and rice, do like another meal in between, chicken and rice, and like dinner, like maybe a steak, but like mostly chicken and rice. Like I would meal prep it. And dude, I was getting ready for a comp, and like this was without a coach. But dude, I lost last January, I was 230. By June, I was 204. And this was the sickest cut I've ever had in my life. And it was natty, dude. I had a sick cut. I mean, it was like, dude, I started seeing the fingers up here. Like I was like, not just a 6-pack, but like the different striations that go up here by your abs. And like I'm posing every day. And like even that process, learning how to pose, all of that, like for anybody who's starting to learn how to pose, you're going to look goofy as hell. Just start posing, bro. You know what I mean? Watch some videos. And then like, even if you watch the video a million times, you're going to look weird as hell when you try to go and recreate it. Cause like, that's just how it is until you get like now I just feel comfortable with my poses. Like I can go to it and I kind of know how to find it, but that's the experience that we're talking about. Like you can't sit and study up on a perfect way to live life. Like you do the best you can, you take advice and you go and you run at it, man. You run at it as hard as you can and try to be smart and learn from your mistakes. But like, dude, I ran chicken and rice. And then this year I've been in a bulk, but this is my first clean bulk. I've always done the dirty bulk, which is just like eating fast food and just whatever. But this time I actually killed a deer in like maybe November and got it processed, and it was super fun, and got a shit ton of deer meat, dude. And like I had been eating white meat because we all know it's lean and like that, right? And then I switched over to deer meat. Some like simple stuff that you can make, like even if you're a bro and you're like not super good at cooking, you can make red beans and rice, and dude, that is like protein packed. Like
Yeah.
to my body, like bro, I felt like beans up in my neck, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you eat a bowl of beans, bro, you're like, am I going to throw up? Like, oh my, because they expand. I'm like, oh my God, like, I am full. I'm like, I'm like watching Netflix, like, just like making noises. I was just so uncomfortable, but like, that's like how like solid I felt. Dude, I would highly recommend, like, if you're going to do a clean bulk and you want like legitimate change, if you can get some deer meat, it's super lean. So I ran deer meat. I did the pinto, or well, they're not pinto beans, but they're kidney beans. You take kidney beans, you soak them in a pot of water overnight. Take those, you can throw it in a crock pot. Invest in a crock pot, bro. Like, if you're doing meal preps, you can run a lot of stuff through crock pot. You can do chicken, you can do a lot of chicken, you can do fish. But yeah, in your crock pot, I let those beans swell up overnight. Dump those bad boys in there. You can put some bacon in there for flavor. You can put like the tri-blend, onions, bell peppers, that whole deal. You can buy that like pre-cut up. Throw that guy in there, season to whatever, flavor. And then I added my deer meat, and I added some like tasty sausages. Like, if you have some favorite sausage that you like Earl Campbell does a good sausage. There's some really good ones like from Louisiana that are good. Like, just anyways, seek out your sausage that you like. I had deer sausage. Threw that bad boy in there and let that boy turn over for like 8 hours. And dude, I just made a pot of rice. I made some cornbread. And you want to talk about a freaking week of bulking, bro. I just came back, just kept hitting that pot, dude. Like, I'm eating lunch, dinner, everything off of red beans and rice. And like, maybe like all the ingredients are like maybe 50 or $60, but the amount of protein that I was getting, I mean, I hit some new PRs that I hadn't hit in a while. Like, when I was, like I said, I've always been strong. When I was like in high school, I hit like, I want to say 455. I was like a running back. I was like a low safety, like a walk down safety, like a strong safety. I was probably squatting 450. I was benching 315. I was incline pressing 275. I was power cleaning, like 2 plates. I ran like a 4.6 and some change. And like in high school, I was like, just started drinking protein, just trying to get big. But like, if you're in high school, dude, when you get to college, they're gonna like add size to you. But like in high school, speed and like a skill set that a college can grow is like what they're looking for. They're not looking for you to come pre-made, like that's what I had thought. I was trying to, go D1 and be like 220 and like 5'10". It's like 17-year-olds don't come like that. And I was just like, I'm gonna eat my way to that. And I ended up like losing some of my speed. And I was like, this was stupid in hindsight. But like, if you are like bulking or like you want to do like a clean bulk, dude, run those red beans and rice, steak. Like, red meat is like a good alternative. Like, if you want to run like a bulk, hit your red meats real hard. Bang those up during the winter. And then if you want to like see a noticeable difference, if you switch back to like white meat, chicken, switch back to fish, and then also the amount of carbs that you're putting with it, like, you can really get into some really cool, like, just being able to adjust your body weight and like how what your aesthetic looks like. Dude, I had the best results. Like, I'm talking about getting into like crazy abs, shredded, striations on my shoulders. All my poses look good, man. My face was not rounded, really lean in the neck. And like, dude, this summer when I went to the pool, like, I killed it. Like, I'm not gonna lie. That ass, man. But it's just like, I did that off of like just the types of meat that I was eating. So like, obviously, like, you're gonna change like how many calories you're taking in, like your macros, your carbs, all that stuff when you're bulking and when you're cutting. But also look into the type of protein that you're taking. Like, that's a fun way to kind of manipulate, and something that kind of a pocket that I found. So just really pushing the limits of like natty bodybuilding. And like, man, it's been suffice to say that like, I've enjoyed my version of bodybuilding. Like, I haven't, like, dude, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Like, yes, of course, like, I know some bros that have like big old necks and like damn, bro. Like, bro will be like, bro, you sure you don't want to run a cycle or trim with me? I was like, nah, I'm good, bro. You know what I mean? I definitely think about it. I'd be like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to be homeless. You know what I mean? I don't want to go to the butt naked room. Like,
no more BNR.
That's literally what it is. It's like steroids, BNR, the butt naked room. Yeah. So, yeah, that was a little bit about natty bodybuilding. I feel like I kind of tried to just like wrap up, like get as much as I can. What stuff did I forget, or like what questions do you have for me? I know I talk forever.
I think we're good. To be honest, I got a dinner I got to go to.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we got to
cool.
wrap this thing
Cool.
up. But no, I appreciated how you segued into some just like practical advice that people can take to the bank, because I think it was a really powerful episode overall, hearing about your journey, but also just I love ending with something where guys and gals, anyone who's listening, can just be like, all right, I also got some stuff for diet, for the gym that I can go implement right now today for not too much money. So I appreciate it. But Cooper, this was awesome. Thank you
Dude, I'm
so
excited,
much. What a gift this was.
Thanks, man.
I really appreciate it. Dude, I'm very happy for you. I'm proud of where you are, and just thank you for the example that you're being in our community, in our world of just, a different way to live, man, and different ways to build confidence. And I can't wait to release this one. This is going to be great. So
really,
thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. Yeah,
dude.
Cool.
Definitely.
Right on.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys all have a healthy and happy Saturday night, and we'll see you next week. Be well, everyone.